That day I had just returned home when I noticed an extra button on the living room table, and suddenly a voice echoed in my mind. Press this button, and you will receive $100 million, but you will be teleported to level 0 of the Backrooms. If you can find a way back, we will reward you with another $900 million. I was slightly stunned. Backrooms? Does that mean the Backrooms? In my memory, the Backrooms were a fictional imaginary world. Could it actually exist? But regardless, the huge sum of money was a tremendous temptation for me. Just as I was about to go online and carefully look up information, that voice sounded again. You only have 10 seconds to decide. Exceeding the time limit will be considered a voluntary forfeit. 10-9-8-7. Listening to the countdown in my mind and thinking of the $1 billion, I gritted my teeth and pressed the button. As the button was pressed, my phone emitted a ding sound of a text message. I picked up the phone and saw that indeed it was a notification of $100 million having been credited. But I had no time to rejoice because that voice told me that in 3 minutes I would be teleported to level 0 of the. At this moment, I felt a bit of fear. Although I had received $100 million, if I remained trapped in the Backrooms, I wouldn't be able to spend it. Moreover, I was completely clueless about what the Backrooms were. But there was no time to dwell on that, because in these 3 minutes I had to learn about the so-called level 0 and the Backrooms. I immediately went online to look up information about the Backrooms. After searching for Backrooms, the first result that popped up was level 0, along with a general introduction to the Backrooms. The Backrooms are a vast fictional world consisting of 600 million square miles of randomly partitioned rooms like a gigantic maze. There are all kinds of strange phenomena that human cognition can never understand, as well as various special items you have never seen before. Most importantly, there is also a type of being called entities, which exist only in the Backrooms and not in reality. Entities cover a wide variety of beings, from friendly natives with human-like intelligence to unconscious, highly aggressive beasts, and even beings whose motives and abilities are beyond our understanding. Entities are the greatest danger in the Backrooms. Seeing this, I suddenly regretted deeply why I had pressed that button, because here my chances of survival were almost 0. But the only thing to be thankful for was that the level I was about to be teleported to was level 0 of the Backrooms. According to the introduction, it was the first level of the Backrooms, and this level seemed to have no entities, making it a relatively safe level. I was about to continue looking up information about the Backrooms, but 2.5 minutes had already passed. I had no time to hesitate. Using the remaining half minute, I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the only kitchen knife in the house. As for food and water to bring along, there was no stock at home, and I had no time to prepare any. As the 3 minutes passed, a strong feeling of falling came over me, like stepping into a void. I dropped straight through the floor, but it felt like only a few seconds of falling before I landed on the ground. I immediately stood up and looked around. The surroundings were exactly as the video I had checked showed: yellow wallpaper and flickering fluorescent lights. I reached out and touched the floor. It was a damp carpet, but the dampness didn't feel like it was caused by water. It was an unfamiliar liquid I had never encountered before. Then I felt the dampness in the air and the pungent smell of decay and mildew. The entire space was filled only with the buzzing sound of the fluorescent lights, with no other sounds. I looked down and saw that fortunately the kitchen knife I had brought from the real world was still there. Gripping the knife tightly, I began to search for an exit. But then I noticed a yellowed piece of paper stuck on the wall nearby. On it was a crooked drawing of a black humanoid figure made of lines, looking somewhat like a twisted stickman. Beside it was written the word "run." What does this mean? Is it telling me to run immediately if I encounter this? I looked at the sticker and began to think. According to the information from the real world, level 0 has a survival difficulty of 1, safe and stable, with very few entities. Perhaps what is drawn on this paper is one of those rare entities. I heightened my vigilance, tightened my grip on the knife, and walked forward along the wall. After walking for over 10 minutes on the damp yellow carpet, I saw nothing but monotonous yellow walls. But just then I noticed another piece of paper on the yellow wall ahead. My heart leaped with joy. Could it be another clue? I hurried over to look, but it made my heart tighten. The content on this sticker was exactly the same as the one I had seen when I first arrived. This meant I had been walking, but I remembered clearly that I had been walking straight along the wall. I recalled the information I had read, which stated that in level 0 a linear space had undergone great changes, so that walking in a straight line would bring you back to the starting point, and retracing your steps would cause a new set of different rooms to replace the ones you had passed. Thinking of this, I changed direction. Since space was not linear, walking straight was clearly pointless, so I decided to keep changing direction as I moved forward. Because I was right-handed by habit, I decided to keep turning right. So every time I entered a room, I turned right. It is worth mentioning that although the place was full of yellow-walled rooms, these rooms only had door frames without doors, as if it were a giant yellow maze. I kept turning right, hoping to find a way out. But all around there was nothing but the unchanging, monotonous yellow. I don't know how long I had been walking, but I was already starting to feel exhausted. Waves of irritability, tension, and loneliness occasionally washed over me. As time passed, the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above grew louder, and occasionally, I could hear whispers seemingly in human speech, but I couldn't make out what language it was. I suppressed my inner irritation and fear and continued exploring forward. Finally, I saw a special wall. On the wall there seemed to be a smiley face drawn with a thick black marker, and below it was a line of crooked English text. Don't move, stay still. Don't move, stay still. What does it mean? My English was poor, so I couldn't translate the English on the wall. I approached the wall to examine it more closely, but suddenly I heard a rapid tap 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 sound from the adjacent wall, as if something was constantly knocking on the wall. What sound? Just as I was trying to locate the source of the sound, I suddenly saw a black figure appear at the corner. It walked toward me in a crooked manner, and from a distance it looked like it was waving at me. Could it be another person who had entered here? Was the knocking sound just now a cry for help? Just as I was about to walk toward it, I suddenly recalled an important tip about entities in level 0 from the information I had read before coming. It is known that there are no entities in this level, including humans. If you see or encounter anything you believe to be another wanderer, it is not human. At this thought, my hair stood on end. If it wasn't human and not an entity, what was this thing in front of me? But I had no time to think, because the black figure suddenly accelerated and charged toward me. I quickly turned around and started running, gripping the kitchen knife tightly. After all, it was my only means of fighting this monster. In the face of great danger, my adrenaline surged, and I ran at an unprecedented speed. I could feel that the unknown creature was gradually getting closer to me. I dared not look back, so I could only use all my remaining strength to run faster, trying to shake off the monster. Gradually, I began to run out of stamina. Due to exhaustion, the surroundings began to blur. The sound of my panting even drowned out the sound of my running footsteps. Just as I felt I couldn't hold on any longer, I suddenly noticed a door ahead. I didn't know what was behind the door, but I knew that if I didn't enter it, I would be dead for sure. I quickly opened the door, then swiftly entered, turned around, and closed the door, all in one fluid motion. At the moment I closed the door, I saw the humanoid monster, which was only an arm's length away. After closing the door, I leaned weakly against it, collapsed to the floor, and began to gasp for air. Backrooms public intelligence bacteria. This is a monster composed of black thick lines, generally inhabiting level 0, but relatively rare. After resting for a while, I slowly rose from the ground and began to survey my surroundings. Behind the door was a small enclosed room with beige wallpaper on the walls and a brighter fluorescent light flickering overhead. To my relief, the room contained a table and a chair, so I no longer had to rest on the damp floor. I hurried over to the chair and sat down, the tension that had gripped me since entering the backrooms finally easing. Then I noticed a folder on the table with a printed eagle spreading its wings, and beneath the eagle were 3 letters, E, G. I opened the folder, and after a brief glance, my breath quickened, for it described the entrances and exits of level 0. My hands trembling slightly, I picked up the document. If it were true, I could end this nightmare, return to reality, and enjoy the $10 million. But reality doused me with cold water. The document stated that the only known way to safely leave level 0 was through clipping out. Clipping out, simply put, meant moving from one level of the backrooms to another. The conditions for clipping out varied between levels. To achieve them, an object had to perform a specific action mostly determined by the level itself, though a few could be assisted by objects or other levels. The most common method of clipping out in level 0 was to touch or collide with a wall to trigger the condition. Thus, clipping out of level 0 would only take me to another level of the backrooms, not back to the real world. Having endured the monster chase, my mind had been constantly on edge, so I hadn't felt thirst or hunger. But now that the intense tension had relaxed, those sensations came flooding in. My mouth was parched and waves of hunger-induced fatigue washed over me. For some reason, my head also began to spin, and I felt as if someone was whispering nearby. According to the M.E.G. document, this condition was spiritual contamination, a common phenomenon in the backrooms. As long as one remained in the backrooms, they would be subjected to this spiritual contamination. Without finding a solution, over time, I would go mad and even transform into an entity. The most common remedy was to consume almond water. This bottled water, widely distributed across many levels of the backrooms, not only quenched thirst, but also cleansed the spiritual contamination of wanderers. As for wanderers, according to M.E.G.'s data, it was the collective term for all who entered the backrooms. In M.E.G.'s records, I also learned that I was not alone in the backrooms. Wanderers were scattered across various levels, and there were many organizations or groups formed by wanderers or entities. M.E.G. was one of the largest organizations in the backrooms, founded with the mission of sheltering wanderers and finding a way out. Reading this, a wave of sorrow washed over me. Even the largest organization in the backrooms had failed to find a way out. What were the chances for an ordinary person like me? But this was no time for lamentation. My vision was blurring and hallucinations began to appear before my eyes. Symptoms of severe spiritual contamination. I had to take almond water immediately. However, level 0 had no almond water. To survive, I had to clip out of level 0. According to the documents left by M.E.G., there was a passage in level 0 leading to level 1 where there was a base established E.G. that could shelter me. The room I was in was called the Manila Room, the safest spot in level 0. It did not produce the same effect as level 0, which prevented wanderers from meeting, but clipping out was impossible here. I had to re-enter level 0. I pressed my ear against the door of the room, listening carefully for a long while. After confirming there was no sound outside, I cautiously opened the door, poked my head out, and stepped out. But after a few steps, I noticed the surroundings began to change. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights above me subsided, the carpet suddenly became dry, and the surrounding rooms started to look like they were under construction. Sensing the shift in the environment, I felt something was wrong. Instinctively, I turned back quickly, intending to return to the Manila Room. After a few steps back, I reached the door again, but it seemed somewhat different from the Manila Room door I had seen earlier. But I couldn't care less. Who knew what eerie entities would appear with the sudden change in environment? I hastily opened the door, expecting to return to the cozy little room of the Manila Room, but the scene behind the door had undergone a dramatic transformation. At first glance, it looked like the environment of level 0 had been completely renovated. The walls were freshly painted white, the floor was covered with dry red carpet, and even more eerie, there was a restroom to my left. This bizarre sight made my skin crawl. As the saying goes, when something is out of the ordinary, there must be a trick. I quickly retreated out the door, but when I turned around, I found that level 0 behind me had also transformed into the same scene. I turned back again, but the door was nowhere to be seen. I was now standing in the middle of a red carpet surrounded by strange white walls. Where is this? Did I clip out? What's here? These were the only thoughts in my mind. I stood hesitantly, afraid to move, terrified that any step would lead me to encounter a horrifying entity. But the situation didn't allow me to stay put. For some reason, the area around me began to shake violently. Ceiling tiles started falling and the walls around me suddenly cracked open, becoming precarious. After dodging a few falling ceiling tiles, I realized I had to run. Whether from the falling tiles above or the collapsing walls, if I failed to evade them, I would be severely injured. In the backrooms, a serious injury meant only one thing: death. I ran desperately forward. As I ran, ceiling tiles kept crashing down with a clatter, the ground behind me collapsed, and walls toppled one after another. I had to clip out of here as soon as possible, or I would be buried alive by the collapsing structure. But misfortunes never come singly. As I dodged the falling tiles and collapsing walls, a black figure suddenly appeared to my left front. I saw it clearly. It looked exactly like the monster I had encountered in level 0. The monster spotted me and let out an excited roar before charging toward me. I fled in panic, with the floor collapsing and walls crumbling around me, stirring up huge clouds of dust. Coughing from the dust, I stumbled along. Then I saw another door. At the sight of that door, hope flickered within me. With the monster closing in, I fumbled to open the door. The moment the door swung open, the destructive chain reaction around me suddenly ceased. The scene before me shifted, and I was back in level 0. The monster's roar faded away. Realizing that the monster hadn't clipped into level 0 with me, I collapsed onto the ground, utterly drained, gasping for air and coughing violently. Intense hunger and thirst continued to assail me, and the whispers returned to my ears. The kitchen knife I had carried was lost during my escape. I was at the end of my rope. But as I sat on the ground, catching my breath, suddenly a tapping sound echoed from the wall. Da-da-da. The sound made every hair on my body stand on end. A few seconds later, a black figure poked half its body out from the corner to my left front. Seeing that black figure at the corner, I leaped up almost instinctively. This was the third time I had encountered this. I recalled the information I had looked up about level 0 before coming. It said level 0, survival difficulty, class 1, safe, stable, very few entities. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. You call this safe and stable? Very few entities. Time didn't allow for much thought, as the monster was already upon me. Driven by a powerful survival instinct, I squeezed out a bit more strength from my body, barely managing to keep ahead of the monster. As I kept running, I spotted a glass ball on the ground, glowing with a white light. On a whim, I bent down and picked it, but due to my prolonged lack of energy and spiritual contamination, the bending motion caused me to lose my balance, and I stumbled into a nearby wall. 2. The reshaped chaos. A sublevel between level 0 and level 1, created by the Backrooms renovation company. After a wanderer enters level 0. 2. The level begins to collapse. This destructive chain reaction stops when the door leading back to level 0 is reached and the level is fully restored upon re-entry. When I crashed into that wall, only 2 words echoed in my mind: I'm done for. But as the saying goes, when all hope seemed lost, a new path emerged. As I hit the wall, instead of a solid impact, I felt as if I had passed through air. My entire body seemed to have slipped through the wall. I instantly realized I had no clipped. According to M.E.G.'s records, the best way to not clip out of level 0 is to crash into walls. But the probability is extremely low, only occurring under specific circumstances. Their archives also note that many wanderers managed to knock-lip while being chased by entities. That such a slim chance fell upon me. I suppose I was truly fortunate. Yet although I had no clipped out of level 0 in my mind, had suffered immense contamination. The moment I landed, I tried to struggle up and survey my surroundings, but my head spun violently, and before my eyes seemed to appear several grinning black faces. My mental state had reached its limit. I could no longer hold on. With a thud, I collapsed onto the ground and lost consciousness. When I came to, I was lying on a white bed, the surroundings resembling a room. The fluorescent light overhead was glaring. I shielded my eyes, sat up, and took in the environment. Then I noticed a red thermos placed beside me. For some reason my mouth tasted bitter, but that was the least of my worries. At that moment I felt unusually energetic. The dizziness, thirst, and dehydration had all vanished. Aside from a slight hunger, I sensed no negative effects on my body. Just then the door opened, and a middle-aged, black hair, brown eyes. He appeared to be Chinese. Seeing me awake, he walked to the bedside, smiled, and asked, "How are you feeling? Any discomfort?" I shook my head indicating I was fine, then asked, "Is this the backrooms or the real world?" The man chuckled at my question. "You call the real world the front hall, I suppose. Unfortunately, no one who enters the backrooms can return to the front hall. You're now in level 1 of the backrooms. I belong to the Lifeline Squad of M.E.G. here to help lost wanderers." M.E.G. My heart stirred. It was the organization that had left records in the Manila room. From their documents, I had also learned about the properties. Level 1. Survival difficulty, Class 1. Safe. Stable. Very few entities. M.E.G. The middle-aged man seemed to read my thoughts and said, "Don't be too optimistic. Most wanderers who knocklip out of level 0 end up in level 1 first, yet a large portion still perish here. Do you know why?" Startled, I asked, "Why?" First, level 1 is not devoid of entities. There are plenty, the most common being smilers and skin stealers. Given your current physical condition, encountering either would mean death. The man paused, then continued, "Second, no matter which level a wanderer is in, there is always a chance of no clipping. Some might stay in level 1 for years without no clipping, while others might knocklip into another level in just minutes. Many wanderers die from no clipping into other levels. And third, lack of almond water leads to low sanity and death. As for why almond water is scarce, you'll understand soon enough," the man said with a meaningful tone. "So what should I do to survive in the backrooms?" I asked. I didn't want to die. I was only 20, hadn't fully enjoyed the world, and in the real world, what this man called the front hall, I had $1 billion. I had to survive. The man smiled again at my question. "Good question. Being willing to explore for survival instead of giving up. That's the kind of wanderer with the highest chance of making it. Come with me first, as someone will explain everything to you." I thanked him, got up immediately, and followed him out of the room. Upon stepping out, I was astonished to find myself in a vast warehouse. The floor and walls were made of concrete with fluorescent lights evenly spaced overhead. In some places, exposed rebar were covered with a thin layer of mist. Just a few steps later, the lights above us began to flicker, emitting a crackling electric sound. Apart from the overhead fluorescent lights, the warehouse had no other light source, so when the lights flickered, the surroundings instantly darkened. Given that we were in a warehouse, the atmosphere became eerily terrifying. I noticed the man beside me had turned pale, but he didn't panic. He pulled out a flashlight, clicked it on, and illuminated the path ahead. Throughout the journey, I could sense his body remained tense, as if on guard against something. Fortunately, we encountered no entities. After walking for a few minutes, we finally spotted a massive black base. Above its gate hung a huge electric lamp, casting bright light all around. Scattered around were several tents, each with a lamp on top, making the area brilliantly lit. As the man led me near the base, a young woman greeted us. "Senior Yu, is this a new wanderer?" "Ah, yes. Please brief him first. I need to check on the other wanderers. There are quite a few lost today." The man surnamed Yu nodded with a smile, left me with the young woman, and departed. The woman waved to Yu, then smiled at me. "That was Senior Yu Rongbing, a very kind person. My name is Yu Huan. He'll give you a general overview of the backrooms." I nodded. "Thank you, Miss Yu." She smiled. "No trouble at all. Explaining things to a newcomer earns me a bottle of red almond water and a bottle of blue almond water. Many wanderers would love to have this job." I was at a loss for words. Having just arrived in the backrooms, I didn't understand these things and couldn't quite follow what she said. Yu Huan seemed to realize I was confused, so she said, "Let me first introduce the rules among wanderers. First, almond water serves as currency in the backrooms, just like money in the front hall. You can use it to trade with other wanderers for weapons, food, and other resources, or trade with B.N.T.G. He'll explain B.N.T.G. later. Let me first tell you about the effects and acquisition of almond water. We are constantly exposed to mental contamination in the backrooms, which reduces our sand value. When sand value reaches 0, we either go mad, die, or turn into entities. The best way to restore sand value is to drink almond water. Almond water can be found in many levels and respawns periodically. It's stored in iron thermoses and comes in 4 colors: gray, green, red, and blue. Gray and green are the most common, and each color has different effects. You'll learn about them later. Now let me briefly introduce the organizations in the backrooms. The girl had spoken at length and was clearly tired. She took a deep breath and continued. M.E.G. is the largest organization in the backrooms. You probably know about it already, so I won't elaborate. Another major organization is B.N.T.G., which stands for the Unaligned Trading Group. You can think of it as the backroom store. As for other organizations, you'll learn about them later, so I won't go into detail. After that, she suddenly asked, I have one last task to ask if you want to join M.E.G. I was still processing everything she had said, and this question caught me off guard. I hesitated, unsure whether I don't know if I should join M.E.G. But after this rescue by M.E.G., I know that M.E.G. is an organization extremely friendly to wanderers. Yet M.E.G.'s purpose is to explore the backrooms. If I join M.E.G., I would inevitably be sent to explore one unknown place after another and might die soon. I want to survive, but joining M.E.G. would mean a high mortality rate. Still, M.E.G. saved me, and it possesses abundant resources that could help me adapt to the backrooms faster. Moreover, exploring the backrooms alone also carries a high risk of death. For a moment, I was caught in hesitation. Yu Huan noticed my dilemma and said, don't worry. You don't have to join E.G. right away. Many lone wanderers live quite well. If things go wrong, you can always E.G. later. As long as you pass the test, you can join anytime. Hearing this, I was stunned. So joining M.E.G. requires passing a test, and Miss, you are a member of M.E.G. Is it appropriate for you to advise me like this? Yu Huan read my thoughts and quickly said, this isn't my opinion, it's the view of M.E.G. as higher-ups. Our founding principle is to explore the backrooms and protect wanderers, so naturally, we offer reasonable suggestions to wanderers. She paused, then continued, for most wanderers, it's better to be a lone ranger for a while, so they can figure out which organization suits them best. Since she had put it that way, I said, all right, it'll take some time to consider before deciding whether to join M.E.G. Yu Huan nodded. M.E.G. has outposts in many places. Whenever you find one, you can take the test and join M.E.G. After saying that, she handed me 2 bottles of green almond water, a bag of meat jerky, and 5 packs of compressed biscuits. This is M.E.G.'s sponsorship for every wanderer who has just arrived in the backrooms. But afterward, you'll have to search for or trade to get more almond water and food. Before leaving, Yu Huan slipped me a piece of paper with a detailed introduction to Level 1. Level 1 is a vast, endless warehouse with a continuous supply of electricity and water. With proper measures, wanderers can live there indefinitely. At the same time, it is much larger, featuring stairs, elevators, private rooms, and corridors. Supply boxes randomly appear or disappear in this level, usually containing some important supplies or useless items. Most notably, when the lights here suddenly flicker or go out, hostile entities are likely to appear. Known entities in this level include the smiling entity and the skin stealer. The method of not clipping out is simple: find a hole and crawl in or wander in an endless corridor. The former may lead to level 19, while the latter may lead to level 2. After reading the introduction to level 1, I suddenly felt lost, unsure of what to do next. Before leaving, Yu Huan told me that B.N.T.G. and M.E.G. both have residential areas, but you need to pay a certain amount of almond water to live there, or you can find a place to stay in level 1 on your own. Somewhat helplessly, I stuffed the bag of meat jerky and a few compressed biscuits into my pocket. But then I suddenly felt a round glass bead. I had picked it up while fleeing in level 0. Now it was faintly glowing, with white fluorescence, looking crystal clear. I had no idea what it was for, but it was certainly no ordinary object. Putting the bead away, I decided to explore level 0 first, since supplies would randomly spawn there. If I found a tent, I could settle near the M.E.G. base, a behavior tacitly permitted by M.E.G. Picking up the 2 bottles of almond water, I headed away from the M.E.G. base. Around the base, I encountered some wanderers who, like me, were also searching for supply. I wandered aimlessly, gradually moving farther from M.E.G. until I could no longer see the exceptionally bright light above the M.E.G. door. Without the illumination of that large lamp, the surroundings became noticeably dimmer. Sometimes I stepped on water, making a pat-pat sound that echoed through the massive warehouse. Occasionally, I saw smiley face graffiti on the walls, and I always gave them a wide berth. After wandering around for about an hour, I encountered no danger, but also found nothing. Occasionally, I spotted a room, but it was already occupied by other wanderers. I was getting tired. I had eaten a compressed biscuit earlier, but now I was hungry again, so I took out some meat jerky and started eating. Just as I was chewing slowly, the lights above me began to flicker. Startled, I jumped up from the ground, grabbed the 2 bottles of almond water, and ran without a second thought. But the flickering lights seemed to chase me relentlessly. No matter which direction I ran, the lights above would immediately start flickering. After running for a few minutes, I caught a glimpse of a sinister black smile emerging from a shadow on the wall beside me. At that moment, with a click, the lights above me all went out at once. In the darkness, I vaguely heard laughter coming from around me. And that smile, its white teeth and white eyes stood out starkly in the dark. It was now drifting toward me, swaying unsteadily. I screamed. In extreme terror, I abandoned the almond water in my hands and ran. I could feel that smile chasing me all the way. Fortunately, as I ran, the lights above began to turn back on one by one. Gradually, I was once again standing under the light. But behind me in the darkness, that smile still hadn't stopped its pursuit. With a grotesque grin, it suddenly accelerated and charged at me. Right then, I noticed a hole in the wall beside me. Without caring whether I would knocklip out, I crawled straight into it. As I entered the hole, the smiling entity behind me stopped chasing. But that familiar falling sensation came over me again. I knew I had not clipped out of level 1, and I was likely heading to level 19, the attic. When the falling sensation faded, I slowly got up from the ground. Sure enough, I was surrounded by a pile of debris with ladders lying around and collapsed bookshelves. Above my head, a light bulb hung from a rope, emitting a dim yellow glow that swung back and forth. The space here was extremely cramped, and everything reeked of decay. I tried to take a step, and the wooden floor creaked loudly. When I casually touched some objects, they stirred up clouds of dust, making me cough uncontrollably. I didn't know how to leave this place, so I had to keep exploring. Level 1's description had mentioned the danger level here. Level 19, the attic. Survival difficulty. Class 2. Unsafe. Unstable. Low entity count. I knew there were entities here too. Encountering one in such a narrow space would likely mean certain death, so I had to find a way to knocklip out quickly. I advanced cautiously. Along the way, I saw an orange glow coming from beneath some floorboards. That light gave me a warm, peaceful feeling, making me involuntarily want to approach. But each time I got close, I pinched myself hard and reminded myself in the backrooms what could be safe. The more it seemed safe, the more dangerous it was. I didn't know how long had passed when I heard a buzzing sound above my head, like the vibration of insect wings. It's here, I thought to myself. Perhaps this was the entity in level 19. Having encountered entities several times before, I had become somewhat calmer. I knew that in this cramped attic there was no escape, only hiding. I slowly crouched down and carefully hid behind a pile of junk. I heard the buzzing sound pass by from my left front, and the dust shaken off by its wings even fell onto my head. I didn't dare move. Only after the buzzing had faded for a long while did I slowly peek out from behind the junk pile. After confirming there was no trace of the insect around, I stretched my legs and cautiously stepped out. And then I noticed a box hidden behind another pile of junk. A supply box. A surge of joy filled my heart. The moment I spotted the supply crate, I was overjoyed. During my escape from level 1, I had lost the almond water, a crucial item. Although my sanity wasn't too low yet, I had grown thirsty after eating some jerky not long ago. Almond water not only restores sanity, but also quenches thirst. The appearance of the supply crate was a timely relief. I hurriedly opened the crate. Indeed, inside lay a neat row of almond water bottles, mostly gray and green with only one red. To my delight, beneath the almond water were a small backpack and a military dagger, along with plenty of compressed biscuits and canned meat. I estimated that this food would last me 3 or 4 days. But what thrilled me most were the backpack and the dagger. I counted 3 gray almond water bottles, 2 green, 1 red, 8 compressed biscuits, and 5 cans. I stuffed everything into the backpack, zipped it up, and slung it over my shoulders, keeping only the military dagger. I continued searching for a way to clip out. I had no idea how to do it, but I could only try my luck. Maybe if I found a door and opened it, I would return to level 1. I pressed on. Without a timekeeping tool, I drank a bottle of gray almond water. Strangely, after drinking it, I felt a sense of fullness. I couldn't help but marvel at the wonder of this almond water. As I explored deeper, I encountered more and more patches of glowing orange floor. Several times I barely managed to resist the urge to step toward them. Just as I finished half a bottle of almond water and a compressed biscuit and was stuffing the wrapper back into my backpack, a buzzing sound came from above again. I knew that entity had reappeared. Quickly I found a hiding spot and concealed myself completely behind it. The buzzing circled overhead for a while, then suddenly stopped. The electric bulb above began to flicker, swaying now and then with a creaking sound. I hid in the shadow behind a pile of debris. The dim yellow light stretched the shadow of the pile, merging my own shadow with it. But what I didn't know was that the entity was crawling on top of that pile, and its shadow had also merged with the debris. I didn't dare look up. After an unknown amount of time, I cautiously poked my head out from behind the debris, only to come face to face with the entity. Startled, I jumped back and stood up, and in that moment I saw the creature, clearly a giant moth. The moth seemed equally startled by my violent reaction. It spread its wings and lunged at me. I swung the dagger wildly and backed away. But that didn't deter the giant moth at all. With a powerful flap of its wings, it was in my face in an instant. Then I suddenly remembered the almond water in my hand. They say human potential is limitless in desperate moments. As the moth lunged at my face, my mind raced. If almond water can repel mental pollution, could it also repel entities? I grabbed the half-empty bottle of almond water beside me and splashed it onto the moth clinging to my face. The moth recoiled as if it had touched something terrifying, springing away instantly. Thankfully, it had only landed on my face and hadn't bitten. Now drenched with half a bottle of almond water and wary of the bottle still in my hand, the moth only circled in the air, afraid to approach. I carefully backed away my other hand, still holding the dagger, sneaking into the backpack to pull out another bottle. But just then something unexpected happened. With a sudden crack, I stepped through the floor of the attic. My body lurched downward, and my entire leg sank. As the saying goes, misfortunes never come singly. The moment my foot broke through, the tense stalemate between me and the moth shattered. It lunged at me while I was still fumbling for the almond water. I struggled violently trying to pull my leg out, but another crack echoed. The entire floor beneath me gave way, and I plunged through. A few seconds later, I didn't feel the pain of hitting the ground. Instead, there was another wave of dizziness and a falling sensation. I had clipped out. Clipping is so easy in the backrooms. Where would I end up this time? That was the thought in my mind as I clipped out. I've noticed that whenever I'm in extreme danger, I inexplicably clip out. Maybe that's a twisted kind of luck, I thought. Once the falling sensation stopped, I scrambled to my feet and surveyed my surroundings. I froze for a moment. I was in a clean, spacious hall. Everything here was decorated in early 20th century style, with elegant jazz music playing from somewhere. Neatly arranged potted plants adorned corners and tables. Sunlight streamed through the windows, creating an unusually warm atmosphere. But to me it felt deeply unnatural. In such a terrifying place as the Backrooms, a scene this harmonious and cozy was itself eerie. I steeled myself, gripped my dagger, and began to explore cautiously. After a full circle, I confirmed that I was in the main hall of a hotel. It was temporarily safe with no entity. I breathed a slight sigh of relief and sat down on the floor. I noticed the floor was covered in a luxurious rattan gold carpet. After catching my breath, I stood up again. From past experience, I knew that staying in one place too long often led to something bizarre. I dared not linger. I had to find a way back to level 1. The main hall had many rooms around it, and even an elevator on one side. I didn't dare enter the elevator. Who knew what entity might be inside or where it would take me? I focused my exploration on the surrounding rooms, hoping to find useful items. Each room had a golden plaque. Most rooms were empty with nothing inside, and some doors were locked. But then I noticed a different door, also with a golden plaque bearing the number 3 in black lettering. Room 3. I pondered slowly, pushing the door open and stepping inside. Inside, I was astonished, not by anything terrifying, but by the complete furniture, toiletries, and a private bathroom. It was a fully livable space. On the bedside table were 3 bottles of almond water, 2 gray, 1 green, and several packs of military rations. After checking the room for any anomalies, I gathered the supplies and stored them in my backpack. Now I had 7 bottles of almond water. I wondered what useful supplies I could trade for when I got back to level 1. After collecting the supplies, I left the room. Though it seemed comfortable, I dared not stay long. Who knew what horrors might appear if I lingered? After leaving the room, I wandered around the main hall and discovered a long corridor. I followed it, expecting to reach somewhere, but instead it led to another room. Upon closer inspection, the room was spacious, but devoid of any furniture except for a single mahjong table placed in the center. What was eerie was that the walls were covered with doors, dense, countless doors. Even the ceiling and floor had. The sight sent chills down my spine. I turned to head back to the main hall, but the once brightly lit corridor had gone completely dark. Staring into the pitch-black corridor, I swallowed hard and turned back around. Forced to enter the room full of doors, I chose it over the dark passage behind me. The bright room felt more welcoming. I sat down next to the mahjong table and surveyed the doors. After a long hesitation, I decided to venture through one. I picked a door at random and cautiously pulled it open. Behind the door was a long corridor lit by what looked like oil lamps placed along the walls. It was fairly bright. I took a few tentative steps into the corridor. Fortunately, the lights didn't go out and the door and room behind me didn't vanish. Relieved, I moved forward. Halfway through, I froze. Crawling on the ceiling were dozens of the giant moths I had encountered in level 19. I stood rigid, afraid to make a sound and disturb the moths above. The memory of level 19 was still fresh. A single moth had already put me in a desperate situation, let alone dozens. I remained frozen in place, not daring to move, while the moth above my head seemed not to notice me lying just as. At this moment, I was extremely anxious. If this continued, sooner or later those moths would realize there was a human beneath them, and they had been here for a while. They must be hungry. And I was right in front of them. I dared not think further, my mind spinning rapidly for a solution. Almond water was certainly out of the question. There were too many moths. Just unscrewing the cap would take precious time, giving the dozens of moths ample opportunity to bite me to death. What else could I do? I racked my brains for a long while, but still couldn't come up with a way out. But just then a gruff voice came from beside me. Don't worry. These are all male death moths. They're quite docile and won't harm humans. The voice came from behind. I turned around and saw a man in military uniform. When he saw me turn, he grinned and said, "What? Judging by your bewildered look, you just arrived in the Backrooms, right?" I nodded and then asked, "You just said death moths don't harm people." "Oh, it's like this," the man said enthusiastically, putting his arm around my shoulder. "This is level 5 of the horror hotel, the largest gathering place for death moths. These moths have a trait: the females are ferocious and attack, but the males are unusually docile and can even be tamed. The ones above our heads are all males." "Oh, I see." I nodded to show I understood, then said, "Thank you, brother. May I ask your name?" "My name is Duan Yoning. Just call me Old Duan." "And you, little brother?" "My name is Lin E. Could I trouble you, brother Duan, to tell me about the things to watch out for in level 5? I can pay with almond water," I inquired. "Haha, brother Lin, no need to be so polite. Keep your almond water. Even if you hadn't asked, I would have told you anyway. It's part of our duty at M.E.G. Duan Yoning patted my shoulder warmly. M.E.G. My heart skipped a beat. There were M.E.G. people here. "Oh, you've had contact with M.E.G. Duan Yoning asked, noticing my reaction. I nodded. Indeed, I was rescued by M.E.G. right after I clipped out of level 1. But later I accidentally entered level 19, and then clipped out of there to here. Then you must have a charmed life." Duan Yoning sighed when he heard I had clipped through 3 levels. But before he finished, his eyes suddenly widened, and he stammered, Brother Lin, did you just say you clipped into level 19? The one called the attic. Did you encounter any orange light there? Did you touch it?" This barrage of questions stunned me. I replied, somewhat puzzled. "In level 19, I saw an orange light about every 10 minutes, but I never touched it." Hearing this, Duan Yoning let out a long sigh of relief. He explained, "You don't know this, but level 19 is very sinister. That orange light can alter a person's perception and control their memories. Extremely dangerous. Most people who enter level 19 are drawn to it and become contaminated. That you weren't contaminated is a blessing in disguise. But we still need to run a test to make sure." I nodded. On one hand, though I hadn't touched the orange light, I had been very close several times, so I wasn't sure if I'd been contaminated. A test was necessary. On the other hand, I also wanted to know where M.E.G.'s base was. After all, they were the strongest faction in the Backrooms. On the way, Duan Yoning explained that level 5 had an M.E.G. outpost used to shelter wanderers and some local groups, and his daily duty was to patrol and rescue wanderers. I also learned about level 5's classification. Level 5, the horror hotel. Survival difficulty class 2, unsafe, stable, with a low number of entities. It has 3 main areas: the main lobby, the Beverly room, and the boiler room. The entities here are quite diverse: hounds, woodlings, skin stealers, and so on, but they are rare. The most common entity is the death moth. Level 5 is their largest gathering place. As we talked, we arrived at a room. Duan Yoning knocked on the door and said someone came out of level 19. "I need some steak to check if he's contaminated." "Steak?" I was puzzled. "How do you check for contamination with steak?" "Haha, of course you don't use steak for the test, but steak is essential for the procedure. Come on, you'll understand when we get there." Duan Yoning laughed, seeing my confusion. Another man in military uniform came out from inside the door and handed Duan Yoning 2 packaged steaks. Duan Yoning gave one to me and led me toward a hall. He said, "This steak is for trading with Samantha. In exchange, she will perform soul reading to confirm whether you've been contaminated. Besides that, you can also exchange for some special information." "Samantha?" I repeated the name. "Is she a wanderer with special abilities in the Backrooms?" "No," Duan Yoning shook his head. "She's an entity, but she's relatively friendly to wanderers. However, when you meet her, you must offer her meat, or she will attack." As we spoke, we arrived at the hall. To be honest, I was very curious what this friendly entity Samantha looked like. Most entities I'd encountered would attack without a word. This was the first time I'd seen one friendly to humans. We entered the hall. This hall looked exactly the same as the one I had seen when I first arrived, but I could clearly feel it was not the same hall. Then near a flower pot in the corner, I noticed a black cat lying on the ground, lazily swishing its tail. The cat saw us, stood up, and walked over gracefully with its tail held high. To my astonishment, the cat spoke in human language. "You too, have you brought any meat?" The voice sounded like a young girl's, but it seemed to carry a mesmerizing quality that echoed in my ears, making me feel dazed. Just then Duan Yoning nudged me with his elbow. "What are you daydreaming about? Hurry up and take out the steak, or Samantha might get angry, and it won't end well." I snapped out of it, quickly pulled out the steak, tore open the packaging, and placed it on a nearby plate. Samantha nodded approvingly and leisurely ate the 2 steaks. After finishing the steak, Samantha sat on the table, looking down at us from a height. "What do you seek?" she asked. "It's like this, noble Samantha. This wanderer beside me just clipped out of level 19. I humbly request that you use your soul reading to check if he has been contaminated by mental pollution," Duan Yoning said respectfully. Samantha nodded and replied succinctly, "No. I was slightly taken aback. So fast. I had expected her to close her eyes and sense something or stare at me with glowing eyes, but she had detected no contamination in less than a second. On the other side, Duan Yongning responded, "Thank you, Samantha. We'll take our leave now and not disturb you." With that, he started to pull me away. But then Samantha suddenly extended a paw pointing at me. "This wanderer stays. I have something to ask him." Duan Yongning was startled, puzzled why Samantha would want to keep me. Still, he nodded and told me to stay, also giving me a reassurance. Samantha never harms wanderers who trade her steak unless you attack her first. Hearing that, I felt a little relieved. After Duan Yongning left, Samantha slowly walked over to me, her yellow eyes fixed on me with a hint of curiosity. She muttered to herself, "He clearly has the aura of the orange light, but why isn't he contaminated? Strange." Watching Samantha circle around me with curiosity, I dared not move. Finally, she stopped and said, "The reason I kept you here is that I need your help. Whether you succeed or not, I won't blame you. Are you willing?" Hearing that, I quickly nodded. Of course I was willing. No matter what, helping this mysterious entity would bring me closer to her, which would greatly benefit my survival in the backrooms. I couldn't refuse. Samantha, seeing my eager agreement, nodded with satisfaction. Then she walked past me and said, "Follow me." I followed Samantha, and we unexpectedly arrived once more at the room filled with doors, the so-called Bay Fuel. You can resist the decay effect of level 19, so you should also be able to resist the resistance effect of the Mahjong table in the Bay Fuel room. Samantha pointed with her claw toward the table in the center of the Bay Fuel room. At the same time, she explained to me, "On the table in the Bay Fuel room, there is an unfinished game of Mahjong. No attempt to finish it has ever succeeded. I call this the resistance effect. Go ahead and try to see if you can complete the game." I hesitated, slightly embarrassed. "Actually, I don't know how to play Mahjong." Hearing this, Samantha was visibly taken aback, as if she hadn't considered that possibility. After a moment of thought, she said to me, "Just play however you like as long as you can end this game. Winning or losing doesn't matter." I nodded, walked to the table, and sat down. As I sat, the 3 sets of Mahjong tiles beside me moved, as if controlled by unseen hands. I marveled inwardly, but I wasn't overly alarmed, for beside me stood an unfathomable entity. Not knowing how to play Mahjong, I simply watched the empty air beside me and mimicked its movements. How it picked up and placed tiles, I did the same. Throughout this process, an intense urge to leave the table surged within me more than once, but I forcefully suppressed it each time. After several dozen minutes, a sound of tiles being pushed over came from the empty air beside me, and I knew the game. Sure enough, as the sound ceased, the tiles on the table swiftly arranged themselves from a chaotic mid-game into a pristine new layout. I couldn't help but marvel inwardly. Just then, Samantha suddenly leaped onto the table, staring at the Mahjong table with curiosity, as if studying something. After a few minutes of investigation, she jumped down, and I asked eagerly, "Does finishing this game of Mahjong trigger something miraculous?" Samantha shook her head and said, "I don't know what will happen. I'm curious myself, but so far I haven't seen any sign of what's to come." I nodded. Suddenly a thought occurred to me, and I quickly asked, "There's one more thing I'd like to ask. Since you helped me this time, I'll answer your question for free." "Go ahead, Wanderer." Samantha said. "How do I return from level 5 to level 1? I asked. Samantha looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Why would you ask such a foolish question? The big guy who came with you to see me could answer that. Ask a different question, Wanderer." I tugged at the corner of my mouth awkwardly, for what she said was true. But since I was new to the Backrooms and had no other questions, I said, "Then I have no more questions." Samantha nodded. "Since you didn't ask a question as a reward for helping me this time, I grant you the right to ask one question without offering meat as tribute the next time you see me." With that, Samantha said she had urgent matters and left, leaving me alone in the Bay Fuel room. After she departed, I had no idea where she went, but the unknown fear surged back. Earlier, by Samantha's side, I knew she would protect me, so I felt little fear and even a certain ease. But now, alone in the Backrooms, the dread of the unknown enveloped me once more. Perhaps it was my imagination, but the moment Samantha left, the surrounding silence seemed to shatter. I vaguely heard someone speaking incoherently behind me, and even felt a tap on my shoulder. But when I turned around, only the eyes of several old portraits on the wall stared at me. I broke out in a cold sweat. I clearly remembered that during my 2 previous visits to the Bay Fuel room, I had never seen eyes on the wall paintings. Now, with Samantha gone, these eyes appeared. An ominous sign, without a doubt. However, I was no longer a novice in the Backrooms. Having survived several chases by entities facing the unknown horrors of the Backrooms again, I was at least not panicked to the point of helplessness. I took a deep breath and pushed open a door in the Bay Fuel room, revealing a long corridor stretching ahead. The lamps lining the corridor cast a dim yellow light, illuminating only 2/3 of the passage, while the ceiling remained shrouded in darkness. This was different from the scene I had seen the last time I opened a door. Clearly, this time it was far more eerie. I didn't know where this corridor led, but I had to walk on to find the M.E.G., ensuring my survival in level 5. As I entered the corridor, the lamps on the walls began to flicker erratically. The little courage I had mustered sank like a stone, for in the backroom's flickering lights always heralded the appearance of entities. In my current state, I was utterly unable to fight an entity. I gripped a dagger in one hand and held an open bottle of almond water in the other, ready at all times. Fortunately, I traversed the entire corridor without encountering a single entity. Beyond the corridor lay another hall far larger than any I had seen before. Perhaps this is what Duan Yongning called the main hall, I thought to myself. The main hall was immense, stretching beyond what my eyes could see. As I ventured deeper into the hall, I noticed that the ceiling remained perpetually cloaked in darkness despite the chandeliers hanging from above that provided illumination. I grew wary, suspecting that the darkness might conceal swarms of death moths. The main hall contained many rooms, all of which were tightly shut. Recalling that I had scavenged supplies from rooms in the previous hall, I figured some of these rooms might also hold resources. I tried opening several doors, but all were locked without exception. When I reached the seventh door, a click sounded, and it swung open. The sight inside stunned me. The room was decorated like the ones I had found supplies in before, but this one was packed. As soon as I opened the door, I was pulled inside with a hand clamped over my mouth. A deliberately lowered voice hissed, "Do you have a death wish?" Roaming around when the Moth King and Moth Queen are out hunting. Moth King and Moth Queen. I was puzzled, but with my mouth covered I could only emit meaningless whimpers. "Let him go, Ronald," an aged voice interjected. "It seems this is a newcomer to level 5, unaware of the rules. Explain to him what the Moth King and Moth Queen's hunt means." The man named Ronald, who had been covering my mouth, reluctantly released his grip upon hearing the elderly voice. He said, "Do you know why there are so few other entities in level 5? It's because the Moth King and Moth Queen of the Death Moths regularly prey on them. Currently, aside from the hive where a Moth King and Moth Queen are suspected to exist, level 5 is the only confirmed location for them. They are among the most dangerous and rarest entities in the Backrooms. They prey not only on other entities, but also on their own kind. This hunting has no pattern, but after years of exploration, our home hotel has gathered some experience. Before they hunt, all ceilings plunge into darkness, and when the hunt begins, the entire level 5 goes dark, with every source of light forcibly extinguished." Before Ronald could finish, a snap sounded, and the light above us went out. The world was abruptly plunged into darkness, and my surroundings fell into a dead silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of the people around me. The aged voice spoke low in the darkness, "The hunt has begun. Everyone stay quiet." As the words faded, I heard countless doors being violently slammed open, followed by a continuous drone of buzzing that assaulted my eardrums. I could even picture the scene: countless death moths bursting out of rooms, swarming forth from the ceiling. Dense masses of them dropped down, circling in the air, waiting to hunt. I didn't know how many people were hidden in this room. At first glance, there were at least 30, and there might be many more such crowded rooms in level 5. If those death moths discovered a room full of food and broken, how brutal would the scene be? I dared not. In the darkness, the buzzing sound rose and fell incessantly, occasionally punctuated by the dull thud of some death moth accidentally crashing against the door of the room where we were hiding. Every time that thud echoed my breath, and the breaths of everyone else hiding in the room, would involuntarily, for we all knew that once discovered, our fate would be death. After an indeterminate period, the chaotic buzzing finally faded away. I knew they had left the main hall to hunt in other areas of level 5, which also meant that the two insect kings, the queen and the king, had appeared. As the buzzing receded, silence returned outside the room. I could clearly feel everyone in the room let out a collective sigh of relief. After waiting a while to ensure no sounds came from outside, I whispered to Luo Nide beside me, "When will the insect king and queen finish hunting?" "No idea. Usually 2 days," Luo Nide replied with a hint of irritation, then added, "How much almond water have you brought? Don't let the death moths kill you before your sanity drops too low and you turn into an entity, dragging all of us in this room into trouble." With that, he pulled out a bottle of almond water and handed it to me, saying, "Don't drink it if you're just thirsty. Save it. Remember to pay me back when we get out." Seeing Luo Nide offer me a bottle of almond water, I was momentarily stunned and moved. I quickly said, "Thank you, but I have plenty of almond water here. No need." Hearing my words, Luo Nide put the bottle away. Then I recalled that Luo Nide had mentioned they were members of the home hotel, so I asked softly, "Is your home hotel really a hotel in the Backrooms?" "What else would it be?" Luo Nide retorted. "If we weren't running a hotel, why would we call it home hotel?" I was taken aback. That reasoning did make some sense. I wanted to ask more about the home hotel, but the elderly voice spoke again. "All right, stop whispering. At this moment, it's best to make no sound at all. If even one death moth hears us, the rest will swarm in. For your own lives, stay quiet for 2 days." The owner of that aged voice seemed to hold great authority here. As soon as he spoke, even those who had been whispering with acquaintances fell silent. Naturally, I dared not continue my questions. Everything would have to wait until the hunt was over. And so after about 2 days in the darkness, the light above finally clicked on with a snap. Having spent 2 days without sunlight, the sudden brightness made it hard for me to open my eyes. After a moment of adjustment, I managed to squint through a slit of vision. At that moment, I saw the foreign old man, the owner of the aged voice, scanning the room seemingly unaffected by the sudden light. This surprised me greatly. The old man seemed to notice my astonishment, but he just smiled at me and said nothing more. Once everyone had recovered, the old man spoke in a robust voice. Everyone, the insect king and queen, have finished their hunt. Now it's our turn to hunt. For this hunt, 10 pairs of male death moth wings can earn you 1 week's stay at the home hotel, while 1 pair of female death moth wings earns you half a year's stay. Go forth and hunt. Immediately cheers erupted in the room. As the door swung open, everyone rushed out, and soon only I, Luo Nide, and the foreign old man remained in the room. Ha! Luo Nide explained it to him. The old man said genially, then slowly walked out. After the old man left, I asked Luo Nide, "What is that old man's identity? How should I address him?" Luo Nide didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took out a lipstick-like object, applied it to his lips, and then said, "He's the master of the home hotel, in level 5. We all call him Old Man." Old Man. I was taken aback. Wasn't that disrespectful given he was the leader of their organization? Of course he asked us to call him that, Luo Nide explained, seeing my confusion. He said he's old, and Old Man fits him well. So even though the title seems a bit disrespectful, we keep using it. Then Luo Nide said, "Let me tell you about the home hotel." The home hotel operates in 3 levels: level 11, level 230, and level 5. It offers hotel services in level 5, open to new wanderers with sufficient food and guest rooms to ensure their safety. However, Luo Nide paused, then continued, "We don't provide services for free. To earn the right to stay at the home hotel, you must regularly complete the tasks assigned by the hotel. We're not running a charity." Luo Nide shrugged and went on, "You've just arrived at level 5, so you might not know how dangerous it is here. The danger doesn't just come from death moths. For example, the elevator you rode can only reach floors 1 to 12, but the buttons show 382 floors. Wanderers who try to go to higher floors have all gone missing or died. So what we've seen is only the tip of the iceberg." Finally, Luo Nide patted my shoulder and said, "If you can, it's best to leave level 5. The danger here is in some ways no less than those dead zones." After saying this, Luo Nide left. His words made level 5 seem even more mysterious in my mind, but it also deepened my desire to return to level 1. I wasn't sure why I was so determined to settle in level 1. Perhaps it was because I had felt warmth there when I first entered. Before leaving, Luo Nide told me that if I wanted to leave level 5, and now was the best time. Because after the insect king and queen finish hunting, they fall into a long slumber, and most other entities here also hide away. So this period is the safest. I returned to the main hall. It was eerily quiet. No death moths, no wanderers, just utter silence. I was puzzled. Logically, I had left the room right after Luo Nide, so I should have been able to see him. But now in the vast main hall, there was no trace of him at all. A chill ran down my spine. The backrooms were full of uncanny occurrences, and this was the mysterious level 5, where it was said that most wanderers didn't die from entity attacks, but from supernatural events. I clenched my fists and slowly backed away, intending to return to the room. Estimating that I had reached the doorway, I spun around to enter, but the door was tightly shut. No matter how hard I pushed, it wouldn't open. I remembered clearly that I hadn't closed the door when I came out in case of an emergency. But now it was not only closed, but also impossible to open. I quickly grabbed a bottle of almond water and held it ready, alert to my surroundings. Then I heard faint, indistinct murmurs near my ear and felt as if a pair of eyes were watching me from a corner. Instantly, cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I frantically tried to open one bedroom door after another, but all of them were locked. On the walls, countless eyes began to emerge. Wherever I went, I could feel those eyes staring at me unblinkingly. At the far end of the main hall, a dark wooden door appeared slightly ajar, as if deliberately tempting me to push it. The murmuring grew louder, and something seemed to cling to my back. I knew that if I didn't push open that wooden door now, I would surely die. I dashed to the door in 3 long strides, and pushed it open. As the door gave way, the familiar sensation of falling arrived as promised. I knew I had not clipped out. I hoped this time I wouldn't end up in a confined space again. That would be too oppressive. That was the only thought in my mind as I not clipped. After a jolt, the scene before me gradually became clear. I realized it was night, not day, in this level. I found myself on a street lined with neat rows of houses standing silently in the pitch-black darkness. The moon hung high in the sky, and the wind rustled the trees along the street, casting gently swaying shadows on the road. The surroundings were as silent as death. Level 5 Main Hall. After my knock-clip, the main hall returned to its calm. From a corner, a black cat slowly emerged. It was Samantha. She elegantly licked her paw and muttered to herself, "Should I say this kid is unlucky or lucky?" Samantha tilted her head, continuing in confusion. If he's unlucky, he managed to knock-clip out of a certain death situation. If he's lucky, the place he knock-clipped into is exactly level 9. Level 9, Suburbs. Survival difficulty class 5, unsafe, unstable, entity infested. And class 5 is the highest danger level in the backrooms. I picked myself up from the street, steeling myself to face an entirely new environment. This is how the backrooms work. Without your knowledge, you are cut into a completely unfamiliar level, and most of human fear often stems from the unknown. The concrete road seemed to have just rained, with puddles forming everywhere, making a splashing sound when stepped on. I walked along the street surrounded by streets, houses, and trees. From time to time, I stepped on water, producing a pata-pata sound. Pata-pata. As I walked, the sound of splashing water continued. I suddenly stopped, but the pata-pata sound of footsteps in water continued. Clearly, it was not my own footsteps, but the sound of some unknown creature behind me. I froze instantly, but after a second I pretended to act as if nothing was wrong, and continued walking, though my muscles remained taut, ready to spring into action. Scrape, scrape, scrape. A sound similar to a hoof scraping came from behind me, and the pata-pata sound of footsteps in water grew closer. I hesitated no longer, and suddenly sprinted, turning at every street corner, hoping to shake off the unknown creature behind me. But no matter how I ran, the pata-pata sound of footsteps in water echoed behind me like a ghost. Realizing that running on the road could not shake off the unknown entity behind me, I gritted my teeth and turned into a house by the street. The houses around here varied in design and size. During my escape, I noticed that each house was distinctly different from the others. I entered a two-story villa. The moment I closed the door, I pressed against it, wide-eyed, surveying the interior while straining my ears to listen for sounds outside. In the silent night, I heard what sounded like a hook scraping at the door and faint footsteps circling around. But the sounds lasted only a few minutes before fading away. Yet as the sounds faded, my mood did not relax. Instead, my heart sank even lower. For the entity outside to willingly abandon its prey meant that there was another entity inside the house that it perceived as a threat. I've truly escaped the tiger's mouth only to fall into the wolf's den. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. The room was pitch black with no lighting on. I tried to turn on the living room light, but it didn't work. Seemingly no power supply. In the house, furniture was neatly arranged in the darkness, and several doors in the living room were closed. On the stairs leading to the second floor, there seemed to be a dark blackish patch that looked like dried blood. At that moment, from a room to my right suddenly came the sound of furniture being knocked over and the scraping of something moving across the floor. My internal alarm bells rang loudly. Before my body could even react, a monster, entirely red, emaciated, yet humanoid in shape, burst through the door. It held an iron rod in its hand, and upon seeing me, emitted a chattering sound like teeth clattering. At that moment, the nearest passage was the stairs to the second floor. In my terror, I no longer cared what awaited on the second floor. As the red monster was about to reach me, I dashed up to the second floor at top speed with the monster right behind. I could hear the creaking of its bone joints as it climbed the stairs. Upon reaching the second floor, I didn't hesitate and dashed into a room with a window. I quickly shut the door and pressed my body against it. The red monster had now reached the door. I braced against it, fearing it would break through, but its action surprised me. It was trying to open the door. I could clearly feel the doorknob being turned. As it turned fully, the monster began to push the door. I strained to hold the door, but I underestimated the monster's strength. With just one push from outside, I was sent flying by the immense force. I fell to the floor, but rolled to the window in one motion. Just as I rolled away, the monster raised a rod and struck the spot where I had been, instantly cracking the floor. Daring not to delay as the monster's attack missed, I seized the opening, quickly got up, grabbed the windowsill, and vaulted out. I landed on the canopy above the door, then quickly jumped to the ground. After landing, I rolled and quickly ran to the street. Sensing that the monster wasn't pursuing, I glanced back. The red monster stood at the window holding an iron rod, calmly watching me. I dared not exchange prolonged glances nor linger on the street. I had to leave this damned place as soon as possible. In just about 10 minutes since arriving here, I had already experienced 2 rounds of escapes, something that had never happened in the other 4 levels I had been to. According to my estimation, the danger level of this level was at least level 3 or above. Recalling my earlier encounter on the street, I dared not stay long. I jumped onto the dirt beside the road, and concealed by the surrounding bushes, cautiously advanced. Just as I walked nervously through the bushes, I suddenly noticed hundreds of colorful cartoon-style kites appearing abruptly in the sky. As they flew overhead, I could even hear children's cheers and laughter. What the hell is this? I cursed inwardly, quickly hiding myself in the nearby bushes. But before I could fully conceal myself, a group of masked men in black combat suits carrying submachine guns on their backs suddenly burst out of a house and ran desperately after the kites. Seeing this, I immediately lost my composure. In an instant, I leaped out of the bushes, and the group, startled by a figure suddenly emerging from the bushes, were about to raise their guns when I quickly shouted, "I am a lost wanderer, please don't shoot." Fearing they might not hear clearly, I followed behind them, repeating it several times. After hearing my voice, one of them made a gesture, and the rest all put away their guns, though their running speed remained. I struggled to keep up, gradually falling tens of meters behind. Watching my stamina wane and the distance grow greater. Just then one of the running group suddenly slowed down, came to my side, and hoisted me onto his shoulder as he ran. Bouncing on that person's shoulder, I was stunned. In the midst of escape, were these people still concerned about others? Could they be from the M.E.G.? At that moment, the hundreds of kites in the sky suddenly cheered in unison and exploded with a bang. As the kites in the sky dissipated, the group stopped running and rested on the spot. The man who had carried me set me down and began to catch his breath. To be honest about this scene before me, ever since I blindly followed this group in running, I had been confused. The reason I followed them was that I was convinced their sudden emergence from their stronghold meant they had encountered extreme danger. And given the eerie situation, if even they hiding in a house had to flee, then I hiding only in a bush would likely be the first to die if I didn't follow them. After they had caught their breath for a while, one who seemed to be the leader said to the group, including me in English, "Let's go to another stronghold." I was a bit confused because back in the college entrance exam my English score was only 73. But fortunately my 73-point English foundation was enough to understand, "Let's go." So I followed closely behind them since they seemed like people who could protect me. I saw them form an orderly formation surrounding me in the center, holding submachine guns in both hands, and keeping watch around, clearly well-trained, and being protected by a group of special forces with submachine guns in the backrooms. Honestly, it gave a strong sense of security. The journey was very peaceful with no danger encountered. Soon after we arrived at our destination, a two-story European-style house, surrounded by a barbed wire fence, standing alone on a small hillside. Following this group, I arrived at another stronghold of theirs. At a point in the barbed wire fence there was a massive iron door. After opening it we entered cautiously, and then another person carefully locked the door from the inside. As I approached with them, I discovered that within their stronghold, besides a European-style residence, there was also a dilapidated power station. Once inside the house, these people relaxed considerably. They slung their rifles over their shoulders and plopped down onto the sofas. The one who seemed to be the leader gestured for me to sit as well. After I sat down, one of the wanderers complained, "Oh damn it," but I only understood the "oh." To be honest, when I first arrived in the backrooms, I was so tense that I never considered the possibility of a language barrier. I had met a few foreigners before, but they all spoke Chinese, so I subconsciously assumed everyone would speak Chinese. But now this group of wanderers was speaking pure English. Maybe they can speak Chinese, I thought. With a sliver of hope, I asked the group, "Do you speak Chinese?" Then the foreign wanderers who had been chatting all looked over. One of them seemed to know a little Chinese and answered in broken Mandarin, "I only know a little Chinese." It was hopeless. We truly couldn't communicate. But then they suddenly burst out laughing, and one of them spoke to me in fluent Chinese, "Don't worry, even if languages differ we can still communicate." It was then that I noticed he had been holding a red lip balm near his mouth while speaking to me. He realized I had noticed the lip balm in his hand, so he simply handed it to me and took out a new one, placing it near. I mimicked him, putting the lip balm to my lips, and tentatively said, "I can understand you because of this lip balm, is that?" "Yes," he nodded. "This is the Babel lip balm. It allows the listener to understand the user's meaning, thus eliminating language barriers." Then he continued asking me, "Where did you clip into this place?" I opened a door in level 5 and clipped into here. "Can you tell me about this place?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "This is the 10th layer of the backrooms, level 9, with a danger level of 5. Hearing this, I was stunned. I had clipped into the highest danger level of the backrooms. As everyone knows, the highest danger level in the backrooms is level 5, the most dreaded of all. Although there is a dead zone above level 5, wanderers are rarely seen there. Generally, the dead zone is extremely difficult to clip into, so its threat is far less than that of level 5. That wanderer saw the shock and trace of fear on my face and comforted me, "Don't worry. The Unfettered Explorer Alliance will take you out of level 9 at the right time." The Unfettered Explorer Alliance. I was taken aback. I had thought they were M.E.G., but it turned out to be the Unfettered Explorer Alliance, an organization I had never heard of. The man nodded proudly and said the Unfettered Explorer Alliance is a professional team that walks the path of war to pave the way for future generations. Our primary mission is the pursuit of safety and happiness. We have specialized task forces that deal with high-risk entities in high-risk environments. He paused and continued, "We are members of the Ridge Guerrillas, specifically responsible for hunting entities and collecting resources in level 9. My code name is Geo. The other 4 have code names Wu, Lu, Chi, and Ba. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What a peculiar set of code names," I muttered inwardly. "Do you have another team with code names 0, 1, 2, 3, 4? Just as I was thinking this, Geo suddenly spoke. "My Chinese friend, although you've met us, don't pin your hopes of survival on us. We can barely guarantee our own safety. You must rely on your own strength to survive." Hearing this, I sat up a little straighter and replied, "I understand. I won't hold you back. If there's anything you need me to do, please just assign it." Geo and the others, 5678, nodded. Then Geo said, "There is something we need you to do right now." I was taken aback. "Hadn't we just come back? Do we have to go out and fight again?" Gio saw my confusion and said seriously, after we rest we need to repair the power station. In level 9, entities are mostly afraid of light sources. Without light our base will soon be overrun by entities. In level 9, it is always night, and only the power station can provide some light. So we must fix it. Hearing this I was still puzzled. What did repairing the power station have to do with fighting entities? Wasn't the power station inside their stronghold? So I asked my doubt. Gio replied, when the power station is repaired it will emit a loud and continuous noise. This noise will attract a large number of nearby entities. So we need to protect the power station from being destroyed by entities until the noise fades. Once the noise stops and the light returns the entities will leave on their own. I nodded to show I understood. Though it was dangerous I had to resist the entities alongside them. Not only because I needed their help now, but also because they had saved me. After I agreed Gio turned to the others and said, when I saw that kid run out of his hiding spot without hesitation to follow us I knew he had more guts than the average wanderer. See I was right. Then he turned to me and said, later apply the Babble lip balm to your lips. Its effect will still work, but the duration ranges from 10 minutes to 2 hours. Because we were about to repair the power station, we all began to replenish our energy. Having fled for so long, I was famished and my sanity level had dropped very low. I took out a bottle of almond water and gulped it down in one go. Back in level 5, I learned from Ronald that drinking a whole bottle of almond water yields the best effect. Also before drinking it's best to sprinkle a pinch of fire salt into it to make it boil. This is partly because you can't be sure whether the almond water has been tampered with, partly because some almond water when consumed in certain levels can cause cyanide poisoning, and boiling effectively prevents that. But I didn't have fire salt so I had to drink it raw. Just as I finished a bottle of raw almond water Gio saw me and handed me a small bag of fire salt along with another bag of an unknown substance that looked like white gelatin. I stared at him in surprise. He shrugged and said, a bag of fire salt and a portion of royal rations for a temporary team member. A good deal, isn't it? I smiled, feeling a bit touched as I accepted what Gio had given me. Since I had just drunk a bottle of almond water, I didn't use the fire salt to sterilize it. Instead, I opened the bag he called royal rations. I took a bite of the royal rations. A faintly sweet and fragrant flavor bloomed on my tongue. I was certain I had never tasted such delicious food. What was even more amazing was that after just one bite, I felt all the hunger in my body dissipate. Such a precious item. I naturally couldn't bear to finish it. So I repacked it and put it into my backpack. But this simple action made Gio and the other 4 teammates stare at me as if I were a ghost. Gio stammered, You didn't eat it all in one go. How is that possible? I was instantly confused. Do I have to finish it all at once? No, Gio said, still shocked. The peculiarity of royal rations isn't in its effect. Any amount you consume provides the energy of 3 full meals. The peculiarity is that once a wanderer ingests a bit of royal rations they become fervently obsessed with consuming more. He paused and continued, still amazed. Everyone who eats royal rations for the first time frantically seeks more after the first bite. Yet it has no addictive properties. To put it metaphorically, royal rations are to wanderers what catnip is to cats. And you are the only person I've ever seen in my life who can store it after just one bite. Maybe I'm gifted. I didn't know why I was different from others. When Samantha asked me to help her, I had a feeling. Now that feeling is stronger. But what exactly is different about me? I'm still not sure. At that moment, everyone was ready. Gio told me about some entities we might encounter in level 9, and then we went to repair the power station. Gio asked me, do you know how to use a gun? I shook my head. I had never even seen a gun in the front rooms, let alone. Gio thought for a moment, handed me a pistol, and taught me how to load it and how to hold it. Then he gave me a triangular bayonet and a beetle statue, instructing me to take good care of the beetle statue. It could save my life in a critical moment. He then began assigning the areas we were responsible for guarding. I was assigned to the southwest side of the power station. I didn't understand why they trusted me, a rookie who had just arrived in the backrooms, to hold this position. Now I stood alone on the southwest side of the power station. Although there was a barbed wire fence in front of me, the first line of defense against entities, it couldn't dispel the fear in my heart. Because Gio said this barbed wire fence had been rebuilt 8 times, and today might be the 9th. The night was desolate and silent, the moonlight gentle. From the darkness, faint whispers drifted into my ears, carried by the wind. I stood southwest of the power station, separated by a wire fence, anxiously awaiting the impending horde of entities. This would be my first time confronting them face to face. Over there, Gio was diligently repairing the generator. When it was fixed, it would emit a loud, continuous noise, and only when the noise subsided would the power station begin to function properly. I was curious why the repaired generator would produce such a loud, entity-attracting noise. Gio told me that in the backroom, safety always comes at a price, especially in a level 5 zone of extreme danger. As I was pondering, a piercing alarm suddenly sounded behind me. In an instant, the sky above was filled with countless kites. I was certain I had never seen so many kites circling in the sky before. Before this, Gio had explained the meaning of these kites. They were called warning kites, a friendly entity found in most outdoor levels. When danger approaches, they warn wanderers of the impending threat and fly in the opposite direction of the danger. As they pass overhead, they emit a childlike laughter. The greater the danger, the louder the laughter. The more numerous they appear, the greater the number of threats. At that moment, the warning kites above us were densely packed, numbering in the thousands. After appearing, they did not fly in any particular direction, but circled above us continuously, emitting cheerful, playful laughter like children. I thought bitterly, did they mean that danger was coming from all sides, and we couldn't escape? Just then I saw a strange, smiling face abruptly appear outside the iron gate. That smiling face was baring its teeth, the white teeth glaringly visible in the darkness. Clearly, it was a smiling demon. The appearance of the smiling demon seemed like a signal. Then a second, a third, a fourth. Countless smiling faces instantly materialized beyond the wire fence, as if they had suddenly emerged from the dark streets. Seeing this, I quickly pulled out 2 bottles of almond water from my backpack, unscrewed the caps, and splashed the liquid toward the fence. The best way to deal with smiling demons was to use almond water. Before coming, Gio had given me plenty of it. After using 2 bottles, though I hadn't killed the smiling demons, I had managed to drive them back. But if I had encountered so many smiling demons alone, I would have been doomed. However, the massive wire fence now separated them from me, and with so much almond water at hand, I felt no fear. The threat of smiling demons was relatively minor in level 9. I knew that the truly dangerous entities in level 9 had yet to appear. Just as I was thinking this, a figure slowly emerged from the darkness beyond the wire fence. It dragged a massive iron rod. Its red body appeared skeletal, but only those who had encountered it knew the terrifying power hidden beneath that gaunt frame. Upon seeing me, it opened its toothless mouth and let out a continuous roar. From Gio's introduction, I had learned about this entity I had encountered before. It was called the Sorrowful Corpse, one of the most numerous and terrifying entities in level 9. It raised the iron rod high, and with a seemingly casual downward swing, dented the wire fence with ease. I quickly grabbed my gun and fired at the Sorrowful Corpse. Almond water was not very effective against it, while physical means like guns were the simplest and most brutal way to kill them. Since it was my first time firing a gun, my first few shots hit the nearby smiling demons instead, and the recoil jarred my hand, causing a dull ache. After emptying the magazine, I finally managed to land a few shots on the Sorrowful Corpse. Fortunately, one of the bullets struck its head. The Sorrowful Corpse slowly collapsed. But instead of blood, a transparent liquid oozed from its body. Due to the darkness, I couldn't see what it was. At that moment, from other directions, I heard continuous gunfire. It seemed my situation was relatively optimistic compared to other areas. After that Sorrowful Corpse was shot, a few more came one after another. But they were all blocked by the wire fence. Before they could break through, I shot them all through the fence. Occasionally, hounds and death moths appeared outside the fence, but they could be repelled with almond water. After several waves of entity attacks, I didn't feel much danger. In fact, I felt a bit relieved. But I didn't let my guard down. I knew that Gio and the others had far more experience in level 9 than I did. They had said this defense would be a near-death experience, so there must be extremely dangerous entities yet to come, just that it hadn't appeared yet. By now, few entities were approaching me, and the noise from the power station was gradually fading. But I dared not relax, for I knew that the most dangerous moment often comes at the very end. Just as I was thinking this, I faintly heard Gio shouting from afar, "All members. Danger. Regroup." Upon hearing this, I quickly packed my backpack and rushed toward the power station without hesitation. As I dashed toward the power station, my peripheral vision caught a massive creature crawling rapidly along the wire fence to my left. A chill ran down my spine, and I immediately sped up. When I reached the power station, chaos reigned. The northeastern direction guarded by Lou had been breached. A large number of smiling demon skin stealers and sorrowful corpses were pouring in, and the remaining team members were locked in a melee with them. Having just arrived, I had no time to speak with the others, for several skin stealers were already charging at me. Fortunately, I had prepared almond water before coming. Facing the skin stealers, I splashed it at them and quickly drew my gun to fire. I was close to the skin stealers, and after emptying the magazine, I managed to kill them. As for the sorrowful corpses, Gio and the others dealt with them. Being weaker, I only handled lone skin stealers and hounds. Fortunately, the members of the Unfettered Explorer Alliance were all highly skilled. Despite sustaining minor injuries, we managed to clear out the entities. What thrilled me most was that the noise from the power station had ceased. With a loud bang, the lights on the surrounding wire fence all lit up instantly, dispelling the darkness. But Gio's expression remained grim. He asked us, "Did any of you see the shadow on the wire fence just now?" I quickly replied I saw it. The four members, numbered 5678, also nodded solemnly, saying they had seen it too. Just as we finished speaking, Gio suddenly raised his gun and shouted, "On guard! On guard! The neighborhood watch has appeared." I turned around and saw a massive monster clinging to the wire fence behind me. It had no body, only a giant bloodshot eyeball. Beneath the eyeball grew 6 slender reddish-brown legs resembling octopus tentacles. The 6 of us were tense. Gio whispered to me, "When it charges, stay back and observe. I suspect there might be more watchers nearby." If they appear, fire your gun to warn us. I nodded. Gio had once described this entity to me. It was a type of neighborhood watch in level 9, more dangerous than the sorrowful corpse, and it was a giant eyeball. Given the level of this battle, I couldn't intervene. My only role was to give warnings. I slowly stepped aside. Just then, the neighborhood watch on the wire fence suddenly leaped, arriving before us in the blink of an eye. Its 6 long legs moved with incredible speed. In an instant, it grabbed a team member and hurled him high. But Gio displayed extraordinary jumping ability. He leaped up, caught the falling member, while the others provided suppressive fire. With the rattling of the machine gun, though the neighborhood watch was thick-skinned, it couldn't withstand such concentrated fire. It began to retreat. As the neighborhood watch retreated near the wire fence, a white beam suddenly shot from its giant eyeball, aimed directly at Gio. Gio's body involuntarily began moving toward the eyeball, but Gio reacted swiftly. He pulled out a spray can, and as he approached the eyeball, sprayed it vigorously. As Gio took out a spray canister and sprayed it toward the neighborhood watch, the creature suddenly ceased its attack, its body swaying unsteadily, as if intoxicated, barely able to stand. Seizing the opportunity, the remaining team members quickly pulled out almond water, and before the neighborhood watch could react, splashed it all over its enormous eyeball. With a sizzling sound, a tremendous wail seemed to emanate from the neighborhood watch's eye. It shook its massive orb, staggering and fleeing in panic. The other team members did not pursue, instead maintaining vigilance around the area. After dozens of minutes, no further anomalies occurred. Phew! Gio let out a long breath and said, "We were lucky this time. The watcher didn't show up, only an advancer." He then continued, "Let's fix the barbed wire first before resting, otherwise we won't be able to relax." I nodded along with the others, and we headed toward the warehouse. This outpost was their largest in level 9, featuring a dedicated warehouse, stocked with ample supply. But just as we reached the warehouse entrance, my heart suddenly jolted, as if something immensely dangerous was The moment this feeling arose, a thick fog abruptly enveloped us. Within seconds, I could barely see my surroundings, and even the members of the Unbound Explorer Alliance were only faint outlines. Just as I was bewildered, Gio suddenly shouted, "It's Crusher!" Damn it! My heart tightened. The Babel lip bomb's effect had worn off, meaning I could no longer communicate with Gio and the others. I couldn't understand what Gio was saying now, but I knew I had to get away from this fog. Because in the fog, goosebumps rose all over my body, as if something was watching me from within the mist. With visibility so low I couldn't see clearly, so I just picked a direction and ran. Then I felt the temperature plummet rapidly. Soon I was shivering uncontrollably, and a distorted wind sound began to echo around me from somewhere. Yet the wind did not disperse the fog, instead it made it harder to hear my surroundings. I wandered aimlessly in the mist like a headless fly, quickly losing my sense of direction. Fortunately, my luck was never too bad, and I soon groped my way out of the dense fog. But as I burst out, I saw a corpse lying on the ground. It was Ba. My pupils contracted sharply. I quickly scanned the area for the source of danger. Then I realized I had crossed the barbed wire and was now on the street. Looking back, I saw the entire outpost shrouded in the thick fog. At that moment, my hearing gradually returned to normal, and the distorted wind sound arose again. But this time it seemed different from what I had heard in the fog. On a distant rooftop, a massive dark silhouette suddenly appeared. It ran and leaped across roofs in an almost impossible manner, and in the blink of an eye it landed on a rooftop ahead of me. It had long, slender limbs resembling a spider, yet bore a human head. The size of that human-like head was nearly as tall as an average person. It stared at me from the rooftop. My scalp tingled, and without hesitation, I fled deeper into the street. I ran desperately, unsure if the entity was chasing me, but I could still hear low growls and sobs echoing in my ears. As my strength began to wane, I suddenly spotted a door open in a house ahead. Standing in the doorway was none other than Lou. He gestured for me to enter and hide. My heart leaped with joy, and I quickly veered toward the house. But just as I approached Lou, he suddenly ran toward me. Alarmed, I sensed something amiss and decisively turned to run the other way. At that moment, Lou's skin abruptly tore open, and a cyanide-skinned monster with a large mouth on its belly burst out and lunged at me. It was a skin stealer. I silently thanked my luck for not falling for the trick. After killing a wanderer, these skin stealers peel off the victim's skin and wear it, disguising themselves as the wanderer to lure their companions. Though I recognized the skin stealer and escaped, my heart still ached, for it meant that Lou was dead too. At that moment, the growls and sobs in my ears vanished. I turned and saw the monster that had been chasing me was now attacking the skin stealer. Overjoyed, I ran even faster. Just then a hand suddenly grabbed me from a nearby bush and pulled me in. I fell backward into the bush and quickly looked to the side. It was Gio. He made a shushing gesture, and I immediately covered my mouth, indicating I understood. We hid in the bush, peering out cautiously. After killing the skin stealer, the monster patrolled the area for a while, then leaped onto a rooftop and swiftly departed. After a few more moments, the monster still hadn't reappeared. Gio beside me let out a sigh of relief. He took out the Babel lip balm, applied it, and said to me, "That monster is called a Crusher. the most terrifying and rarest creature in level 9. It's extremely difficult to encounter, but today we ran into one, and we've lost at least 2 team members. He sighed and continued, still this monster has very poor eyesight. If you hide quickly after encountering it, you usually won't be found. I nodded, seeing his sorrow, and applied the Babble lip balm to offer a few words of comfort. Gio said thank you. But speaking of which, what's your core energy? I've never seen you use it. Hearing this question, I was stunned. Core energy. What is core energy? Gio was also taken aback, apparently not expecting me not to know what core energy was. Then something came to mind, and I pulled a white orb from my backpack, asking, is this what you mean by core energy? Gio slapped his forehead and said, I'm being foolish. He then explained to me, core energy is a gift from the Backrooms. It has a chance to appear in dangerous places. The more dangerous the place, the higher the grade of core energy, with the highest being grade 7. Each core energy also has different functions. Some can enhance agility, some can enhance strength. As the grade increases, the enhancement magnitude also increases. Typically, each person can equip 3 core energies, but they cannot equip duplicates. For some reason, certain wanderers can carry 5 core energies. One theory is that living in high-risk environments for an extended period has a chance to trigger this. I happen to be able to carry 5, which to some extent supports that theory. Gio paused, then continued. Also, those who equip core energy can sense the presence of another person's core energy. But I didn't realize you were only carrying it without equipping it, and didn't even know how to equip it. Hearing this, I gained a rough understanding of core energy, and also knew why Gio was so confident in letting me guard the southwest direction. He thought I had equipped the core energy, and was fairly strong. I thought for a moment, and asked, how do I equip the core energy? Gio replied, it's simple. Just swallow this core energy. Once you do, it will appear in your mind, and you will know its information. I nodded slightly, and without hesitation swallowed the core energy in one gulp. Immediately, the corresponding information appeared in my mind. Core energy grade 2. Effect speed 2. Equipped. Remaining slots 3. I told Gio about the enhancement, and asked him how much speed 2 increased. Gio said, for example, if you normally run 100 meters in 12 seconds, with speed 2 you can run it in 11 seconds. That's not much of an increase. I muttered. Not much. Gio rolled his eyes. Do you know how much training a normal person needs to run 11 seconds? Do you think core energy can give you superpowers? It only provides a simple enhancement to our physical functions, nothing too exaggerated. I once saw a wanderer who had 3 slots all equipped with grade 4 core energy, yet he couldn't defeat a single corpse with a club. So don't think core energy makes you invincible. Thinking that way will only harm you. I nodded earnestly and continued, if I equip a core energy, can I replace it with another one? That's possible, Gio replied, but only when entering a new level, and you can only replace once within that level. To replace a second time, you'd have to re-enter the same level. I nodded to show I understood, and said to myself, equip. Instantly 3 slots appeared in my mind. 1 slot lit up with an orb, while the other 2 were empty. Just as I was about to ask Gio about his core energies, another anomaly struck. Beside Gio, a floating one-eyed humanoid monster suddenly appeared. It reached for Gio, and without a second thought, I shoved Gio aside. Startled, Gio was pushed away by me. I quickly jumped up and distanced myself from the one-eyed monster. Gio reacted swiftly. The moment I pushed him, he braced his hand on the ground and rolled behind a tree. As soon as Gio put distance between himself and the unknown entity, he immediately shouted a warning to me. Watch out. It's a teleporter. As soon as Gio put distance between himself and the unknown entity, he immediately shouted a warning to me. Watch out. It's a teleporter. Trailing black. It then drifted toward me. Before I could react, it was already in front of me. On the other side, Gio drew a military knife to come to my aid, but by then the entity had grabbed me and flung me against a nearby wall. The one-eyed entity suddenly accelerated, seized me, and hurled me violently against the wall. The moment my body made contact with the wall, an intense sensation of falling overwhelmed me. It was a not clipping. This one-eyed entity was actually a clipper. Gio had told me about clippers. They would randomly grab a wanderer, seamlessly clip them into the nearest wall, and then 2 outcomes could occur. Either the wanderer would die quickly, or they would fall into a void and eventually land in a level of uncertain safety. When the familiar sensation of falling ceased, the scene before me had transformed dramatically. I looked up and saw yellowed wallpaper, damp carpet beneath my feet, and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My hands pressed against the wet carpet, and I couldn't help but smile wryly. I was back in level 0. But since I was in level 0, it meant I could not clip to level 1. To do so, my first task was to find a I quickly accepted my current situation, scrambled to my feet, and began recalling information about level 0. Entities in level 0 were not numerous, and the only truly threatening one was the creature I had encountered earlier, known as the bacteria. The pistol Gio gave me still had 1 box of bullets left, enough to fill 2 magazines. So I wasn't particularly afraid of the bacteria at the moment. I checked my backpack. There were still over a dozen bottles of almond water, a bag of royal ration, and some compressed biscuits. All of that would be sufficient to sustain my exploration of level 0. I shouldered the backpack and began venturing deeper into level 0. Normally, over a dozen bottles of almond water would be quite heavy, but I felt no weight at all in the backpack. I only realized this belatedly in level 9, which made me marvel at the wonder of the backrooms and my own good fortune. I wandered aimlessly, reaching out to touch every wall I came across, trying to knockclip. After walking for a while, I noticed a patch of carpet that seemed slightly different from its surroundings. Visually, the carpet looked identical to the others, but in my perception it felt distinct. Though I couldn't articulate the difference, it was just a sensation. I tried stepping onto it, and the next second my body passed straight through the carpet and fell. The fall lasted only a second before I was clipped into a new level. I silently cursed myself. Why did I have to be so reckless and step on it? If I had been clipped into a danger level 5 location, there wouldn't even be anyone to collect my body. I got up from the ground and began to survey my surroundings. It appeared to be a cave with rugged rock walls all around. Behind me, I could hear the sound of water. Could there be a river in this cave? My heart stirred, and I quickly turned around only to be stunned by the sight before. Behind me was a small hot spring in which dozens of naked men were soaking, their eyes fixed intently on me. Although I had no idea what was happening, I awkwardly waved my hand and said, "Quite a refined pastime you all have, enjoying a hot spring in the backrooms." One of the men stared at me expressionlessly and asked, "Would you like to join us?" I quickly declined. No, I accidentally clipped in here. They'll leave soon, so I won't join." The man nodded and told me, "Don't worry. This is level 27, the rock spring. It's a paradise for wanderers. Not only are there no entities here, but the hot spring also has a positive effect on wanderers, relieving some ailments and fatigue. If you want to leave, do you see the waterfall over there?" The man pointed. "I saw a waterfall to my right. There's a ladder. Climb up into that tunnel, and you'll return to the place you clipped from," he added. I quickly thanked him and walked in the direction he indicated. Sure enough, I found a ladder propped beneath a tunnel. I noticed a few tents beside the ladder with 3 letters printed on them: M-E-G. So M-E-G had personnel stationed here as well. I silently mused, then climbed up the ladder. For some reason, being in this narrow cave made me feel extremely uncomfortable, with a severe sense of oppression. Although the man called it a paradise for wanderers, I inexplicably detested it. As I crawled into the tunnel to knockclip out, I felt a sense of escape. After crawling for a distance, a familiar sensation of falling came over me, and the scenery before me shifted. A second later, the familiar dampness returned. I had left level 0 just a few minutes ago, and now I was back. For some reason, returning to level 0 gave me a strange sense of homey warmth. After exploring level 0 for a while, I finally spotted a wall that looked somewhat unusual. I gave the wall a slight bump, and the familiar falling sensation returned. Fortunately, nothing went wrong this time. When the falling sensation ceased, I looked up and found myself in a huge wave. I stepped onto the solid concrete floor, feeling somewhat reassured. After all that wandering, I had finally returned to level 1. I wondered how Jill was doing. I thought to myself, shouldered my backpack, and turned on a flashlight to search for other wanderers. I used the flashlight because I was afraid the overhead lights might suddenly go out, attracting entities. In level 1, encountering a single entity would be manageable, but if I ran into 2 or more, I could be in danger. To be cautious, I kept the flashlight on. After wandering around, I finally spotted the massive black base of M-E-G. M-E-G had hung 2 huge searchlights on the base's gate, so even from a distance the bright lights were clearly visible and easy to identify. When I arrived at the M-E-G base, the surroundings looked exactly the same as last time, tents everywhere. These were wanderers who didn't have enough almond water to purchase residence rights from B-N-T-G or M-E-G. They had set up shelters around the M-E-G base, seeking protection from M-E-G. In another way, one major reason I wanted to come to level 1 was to find a safe place to live. To obtain residence rights in M-E-G's shelter, one had to pay a certain amount of almond water or join M-E-G. Obviously, I didn't have that much almond water, so the only viable option was to join M-E-G. Before coming, I had already planned my survival in the backrooms. First, join M-E-G, explore various levels, and collect supplies. Once I had enough supplies to exchange for permanent residence in level 1, I would leave M-E-G and return to live in level 1. I had heard that in level 1, M-E-G and B-N-T-G had jointly built a small wanderer settlement with some basic infrastructure like a small town. Of course, besides the above reasons, there was another important factor for wanting to join M-E-G. Even now, I still harbored a faint hope of leaving the backrooms. Sometimes I fantasized that after joining M-E-G, I would, through one expedition after another, accidentally discover a way back to the front rooms. Of course, this idea was too ethereal, though I didn't really hold out hope myself. My biggest task now was simply to survive in the backrooms. While lost in thought, a member of M-E-G approached me and asked, "Wanderer, we noticed you've been standing at the entrance of M-E-G base for a while. Is there anything we can help you with? That snapped me back to reality. I realized I had been so absorbed in my thoughts that I had forgotten I was standing at the M.E.G. base entrance. I quickly replied, yes, there is something I need help with. How do I join M.E.G.? May I ask how I can join the M.E.G.? I inquired. That M.E.G. member paused for a moment then replied, it's quite simple. Just register at the community center and you can join the volunteer brigade. However, this is a temporary membership. While you still enjoy some M.E.G. services, it's not the same as being a full member. To become a full member, you need to complete certain tasks. Oh, by the way, what should I call you? This M.E.G. member asked me. My name is Lenny, and how should I address you, brother? I asked. So you're brother Lenny. Just call me Gongjiang. I'm actually also a member of the M.E.G. volunteer brigade, not yet a full member, Gongjiang said. I chatted with Gongjiang for a while longer and roughly understood what the volunteer brigade was. It was a department of the M.E.G. akin to a militia or emergency volunteer force. Usually they maintained order at several of the M.E.G.'s base outposts. Of course, you could also choose to accept tasks assigned by the M.E.G. to explore various levels. If you performed exceptionally well, you could formally join the M.E.G. and gain residency rights across all M.E.G. levels. As we spoke, we arrived at the M.E.G. community, which was connected to the B.N.T.G. community. Gongjiang led me to the door of a small house and said, Brother Lin, you register here. There will be dedicated staff to assist you. Having said that, he prepared to leave as his job was to maintain order at the M.E.G. entrance gathering area. At that moment, I stopped. Gongjiang handed him a bottle of almond water and said, thank you for guiding me. Upon seeing the almond water, Gongjiang quickly pushed it away and said, Brother Lin, this won't do. It's far too precious. I merely guided you. It's not worth a bottle of almond water. I was slightly taken aback. Wasn't it just a bottle of almond water? Why was it so precious? Back in level 9, if not for my backpack being full, Geo would have stuffed me with hundreds of bottles of almond water. So I instinctively felt that a single bottle wasn't much. In truth, for wanderers who frequently roamed various levels, a bottle of almond water was indeed not much, as they gathered plenty of supplies during their explorations. But Gongjiang and his group were different. They always stayed in level 1, and all their supplies were provided by the M.E.G. Moreover, since they rarely encountered entities and stayed in a safe level, their sanity dropped very slowly, so they had little need for almond water. To them, a bottle of almond water might have been worth a few hundred yuan from the front hall. That was why Gongjiang had been so eager to refuse. Finally, I forced the almond water into his hands and walked into the small registration cabin. Upon entering, I saw a girl sitting inside earnestly reading a book. This girl was none other than Yu Huanhuan, whom I had met when I first entered level 1. Now upon seeing me, Yu Huanhuan let out a surprised, ah, and then said, you've made up your mind. Ready to join the M.E.G. I nodded and said yes. They'll trouble miss you to register me. Oh, Yu Huanhuan waved her hand saying, you're too polite. It's not trouble at all, it's my job. Hardly any. Saying this, she pulled a form and a pen from the drawer beside her, handed them to me, and said, fill this out. Since we're fated to meet, they'll personally recommend you later. You can pick any squad from the volunteer brigade. I took the form and pen, thanked her, and began to fill it out carefully. After finishing, Yu Huanhuan led me toward the community center. Along the way, I observed my surroundings curiously. There were many makeshift houses huddled together, street lamps glowing along the road, and cement-paved streets. I could even see quite a few people coming and going. I even spotted some shops selling supplies. I couldn't help but marvel inwardly. No wonder the M.E.G. was the largest group in the Backrooms. They had managed to build a small community here. During the walk, Yu Huanhuan and I kept chatting, and I gained a deeper understanding of the M.E.G. At last we arrived at the M.E.G. base established in the community. This M.E.G. base was different from the one I had seen before. This one was a civil base, while the one I had seen earlier was a military base. But both belonged to the M.E.G. stationed in level 0. I followed Yu Huanhuan into the base. There were also M.E.G. members standing guard at the entrance. After Yu Huanhuan showed her credentials and explained our purpose, they let us in. Once inside, I noticed the atmosphere was somewhat solemn. 3 teams were assembled in the base. 2 of the team members wore combat suits, while the rest were dressed in military uniforms. What startled me even more was that the 2 members in combat suits were actually equipped with nuclear energy. Because I also possessed nuclear energy, I could clearly sense theirs. Evidently, they sensed mine as well, and they all turned their heads to look at me. At that moment, an M.E.G. member who looked like an officer walked in from another door. This person also carried nuclear energy. He glanced at me with slight surprise, then turned to Yu Huanhuan and asked, this person is? Yu Huanhuan replied, his name is Lin. He wants to join the volunteer brigade, and I am his sponsor. The officer nodded, then looked at me and said, Lin E, you've come at the right time. The M.E. is in need of manpower. I hereby appoint you as the captain of the 3rd volunteer squad. Now follow the 1st and 2nd squads to provide support in level 3. Once you reach level 3, someone will assign you tasks. I was stunned. I had just joined the M.G. and now they were appointing me as a captain and sending me to support level 3. I had heard of level 3, power plant. Survival difficulty class 4. Unsafe, unstable, medium entity count. I had just joined the M.E.G. and now they were sending me straight to a class 4 level. Lin E was just a rookie who had entered the backrooms not long ago. What did I do to deserve being constantly dispatched to such high danger levels? I was about to refuse, but the officer seemed to read my hesitation and added, if this volunteer mission succeeds, I will promote you to full M.E.G. membership and you will have residency rights in both level 1 and level 4. Moreover, he continued, since you possess nuclear energy, I believe in your ability. Well, upon hearing the officer's promise, the words of refusal I had prepared stuck in my throat and turned into understood. He'll get the job done. The officer patted me on the shoulder, then turned to a nuclear energy user beside him and said, Ban Tianni, go to the warehouse and fetch a combat suit and a weapon for Lin E. Then set off for level 3 immediately. The team member named Ban Tianni replied with a crisp, yes, and quickly fetched a combat suit and a pistol, handing them to me. I went into a room, changed into the combat suit swiftly. It fit perfectly, neither too big nor too small. Moreover, a dagger was strapped to the leg of the suit and several boxes of ammunition were tucked into the breast pocket. I took one out and saw it match the pistol I was using. After getting dressed, I came out and rejoined the team. The other 2 captains and I each led 5 members. Meanwhile, Yu Huan had already left. Perhaps she never expected that casually recommending a wanderer would result in him suddenly becoming a captain about to embark on what seemed like a high-difficulty mission. After we organized our formation, we left the M.E.G. civil base and headed for the hub. The hub resembles a tunnel with numerous unlocked doors on both sides. Each door corresponds to a specific level. Opening the appropriate door will teleport you to that level. There is a stable way to enter the hub from level 1. First, start from the entrance of level 1. The so-called entrance of level 1 is where most wanderers appear after cutting into this level. It is located near the M.E.G. military base. There you will find a corridor. Walk straight along the corridor, pass through a door, and continue to the end of the corridor. Then retrace your steps back to the entrance of level 1A, and you will discover a new fork. Take the left fork, then at the next fork go right, and at the next fork go right again. After that you will see 2 doors marked A and B. Enter door B. After passing through that door you will find yourself in a completely identical room. This time choose door A. Upon entering door A you will reach the hub. If you make a wrong turn at any step, the destination will be completely random. Since it was my first time entering the hub, I had no experience, so I followed behind Ban Tianni and the other team members' squad. Proceeding according to the method described above, we finally arrived at the hub. The hub was a special level. Here, as long as you possessed enough level keys, you could access any level. Upon entering the hub, I found it seemed to be a tunnel lined on both sides with numerous locked doors. I speculated that these must be the passageways leading to various levels. At that moment, Ban Tianni took out a key and I noticed that the key seemed to be vibrating faintly. Then Ban Tianni led our 3 squads to a door and opened it. I took a deep breath and followed him through the door. With a familiar sensation of falling, I climbed out of the hub. I took a deep breath and followed him through the door. With a familiar sensation of falling, I climbed out of the hub. After the falling sensation ceased, I felt solid ground beneath me. I quickly got up and observed my surroundings. I was in a dark corridor with walls made of brown bricks covered in. The corridor I was in was narrow and cramped with a rusted iron door nearby. I tried to push open the iron door, and it let out a creaking sound as if it could barely bear the weight. Behind the door was another long corridor, pitch black in the depths, but upon closer inspection, it seemed as if shadows were moving within. I stood there growing anxious. According to Ban Tianni, after entering level 3 from the hub, we would most likely all knocklip into the same area. E.G. had its base set up there as well. But clearly M.E.G. would not set up a base in such a narrow and lengthy corridor, and there was no sign of Ban Tianni or the others nearby. So I deduced that I might have been randomly knocklipped into an unknown area. I sighed. In the backrooms, the greatest danger was change. One moment you might be in the safe level 1, but the next you could be knocklipped into level 9, rampant with entities. One moment you might be relieved to have escaped the danger, but the next an even more terrifying entity could spring up to chase you. Just like now, I had thought I would directly knocklip into the M.E.G. base, but instead I was thrown into an unknown area separated from my teammates. I gripped my pistol tightly, stepped on the dust-covered floor, hunched my back, and advanced cautiously. Before coming, I had briefly studied some information about level 3. Level 3 was a series of dark and winding corridors structurally similar to level 0, composed of randomly segmented spaces with no specific pattern. In these corridors, almost every few steps one could encounter entities lurking in the shadows, the most representative of which were the hounds. The place was filled with droning machine noise, making it hard for me to rely on my ears to detect whether any entities were approaching. I widened my eyes, holding a gun in one hand and a flashlight in the other, probing ahead. Finally, I saw a turn ahead. But at that moment, at the turn, a human head slowly emerged from the wall. That head had long black hair. After locking eyes with me for a second, it suddenly jumped out from the wall and ran toward me. It crawled on all fours, charging at me like a primitive beast. This was a hound. I quickly raised my flashlight and shone it at the hound's head. As the light struck, the hound faltered, let out a wail like a crying baby, and slowly backed away. I knew that retreat was only because the hound hadn't reacted in time, or once it adjusted to the light, it would pounce even faster. Seizing this opening, I wanted to shoot, but halfway through pulling the trigger, I hesitated. The corridors here were all narrow. Once the gunshot rang out, it would likely be heard for hundreds of meters, inevitably attracting numerous nearby entities. I quickly drew my dagger, ready to engage in melee combat with this hound. I had some experience dealing with hounds, having killed quite a few in the suburbs of level 9. I had thought hounds were easy to deal with, but the moment the hound pounced, I realized my underestimation. The hound looked small, but its strength was immense. When it crashed into me, the tremendous impact instantly knocked me off balance. Almost at the same moment, its gaping mouth full of sharp teeth snapped toward my neck. I broke out in a cold sweat. In desperation, I thrust the flashlight into the hound's mouth to block it, while my other hand, holding the dagger, swiftly plunged it into the hound's neck. In one breath, I stabbed the hound's neck several times until it collapsed limply to the ground. Only then did I sit down, heavily gasping for air. By then, the flashlight had been chewed to pieces, and without my noticing, my arms and abdomen had been scratched several times by the hound's claws. Due to the surge of adrenaline, I hadn't felt the pain initially, but now that I had relaxed, the scratches on my arms and abdomen began to burn fiercely. At that moment, I suddenly understood why I had been able to kill several hounds so easily in level 9. In level 9, the entity's hostility was attracted by the noise from the power plant. Unless provoked, they wouldn't attack you, which is why I had shot them so smoothly. But now it was different. This hound's full hostility was directed at me, making the fight naturally much more trouble. I looked at the shattered flashlight in my hand, feeling a lingering fear. If that bite had been on my neck, what would my neck? I sat on the ground, resting for a while, rinsed my wounds with almond water, and then continued exploring. Now I had only two choices: either knock out or find M. E.G. The best option for now was to find M. E.G. Since the flashlight was broken, I could only press against the wall, groping my way in the darkness. After walking in the dark for a few minutes, I saw a prison-like iron grate nearby. For some reason, after coming near this iron grate, I felt as if a pair of eyes were watching me from behind. I tried to see what was behind the iron grate. Vaguely, I seemed to glimpse a dark human figure. A strong sense of fear and unease washed over me. I shuddered and quickly moved away from the grate. But just then, a black hand suddenly extended from the wall behind me, grabbing my backpack. Instantly, a tremendous force pulled me, and my body slammed uncontrollably against the wall. That hand seemed to come from inside the wall, desperately pulling me toward it. At that moment, I felt the hand lift me up against the wall, and then start moving, heading straight toward the end of the corridor. Fortunately, the creature had grabbed my backpack. I quickly slipped the backpack off my shoulders, dropped to the ground, and moved away from the wall. The creature, sensing its prey had escaped, dropped the backpack and retracted its arm. Then I faintly heard an angry roar from behind the wall. My scalp tingled. After waiting a moment, I prepared to pick up the backpack and retreat. But to my surprise, the moment I reached for the backpack, the monster's hand shot out again and grabbed my arm. I was utterly horrified. I had deliberately waited a few minutes, hoping the monster would leave before I retrieved the backpack. But the monster seemed to know I would definitely pick up the backpack and had been waiting beside it like a trap. After grabbing my hand through the wall, it dragged me rapidly toward the turn in the corridor. The creature was immensely strong. It pulled my hand, dragging me along. I struggled desperately, but the monster's speed was unaffected, still hauling me swiftly. At this rate, the monster would drag me to the corner in less than 10 seconds, and beyond that corner undoubtedly lay the monster's body. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, but before I could think of anything, the monster's hand had already pulled me to the... At the corner, a monster appeared before my eyes. Its appearance was dark gray humanoid, but nearly dozens of centimeters taller than a normal person. What astonished me most was that the arm gripping mine was over a meter long. It held my arm with one hand, slowly lifting me up as if intending to do something. I wanted to resist violently, but the hand gripping me was like an iron clamp, holding me tightly. No matter how I struggled, the hand did not budge an inch. It held me with one hand, while the other slowly reached toward my wounded abdomen. I felt a surge of despair. It's over. That was the only thought in my mind when the creature's claw reached for my abdomen. But the moment that creature's claw touched my abdomen, it suddenly retracted, and the other hand, holding me, also released abruptly. I fell to the ground with a thud. Watching the creature step back warily, a sudden realization dawned on me. In the earlier fight with the hound, my abdomen had been scratched, and I had used almond water to clean the wound. I fell to the ground with a thud. Watching the creature step back warily, a sudden realization dawned on me. In the earlier fight with this left a large area of my clothes around the abdomen soaked, and when the creature reached for my wound, it came into contact with the almond water. Logically, the small amount of almond water on the clothes shouldn't have been able to harm the creature, but for some reason, it was extremely wary. Taking advantage of the creature's hesitation, I quickly got up and ran toward where my backpack had fallen. Inside were my reserves of almond water. As if it knew what I intended, the creature didn't chase after me, but instead roared twice behind me, and then turned, disappearing into the dark corridor. By then I had picked up my backpack and taken out the almond water, but I was still shaken. Truly worthy of a level 4 zone. I almost met my end here. I immediately packed up the backpack, holding a dagger in one hand and the almond water in the other, and continued onward. No matter how dark the corridor was, I dared not walk close to the wall anymore. After I had walked for a few more minutes, the surrounding environment grew increasingly hot, and the air pressure seemed to rise. Breathing became more difficult, as if I were trekking on a high plateau. At that moment, I saw what seemed to be a light in the distance. My heart leaped with joy. Could there be a wanderer ahead? I quickened my pace and hurried over. When I got closer, I realized the light came from a bottle. Inside the bottle, a blue something was constantly. I stared at it for a long time and realized it was lightning. Lightning bottled up. I was stunned, but at the same time I thought, if I encountered a creature, could throwing this lightning at the critical moment save my life? I tried to pick up the bottle of lightning. It was a bit hot to the touch. After finding something to pad my hand, I gently shook it, and the bottle emitted a bright blue glow. Maybe I can use it for light, I thought. With that in mind, I put away the dagger and held the bottle in my hand, stretching it. Indeed, the blue light from the bottle illuminated the surroundings. Though it was a bit dim, it was much better than before, when I could only make out the outlines of objects. I continued exploring along the corridor, passing several rooms along the way, but I dared not venture deep inside. Who knew what strange entities might lurk there? Now all I wanted was to find M.E.G. and rendezvous with the main force. Then I came to a slightly brighter spot and noticed a humanoid silhouette in the shadows ahead. I didn't dare approach. When I was still a good distance away, I stopped. That person also saw me. He waved at me from afar and said, "Hello, may I help?" I understood that. He was asking if I needed help. If it were a creature, it wouldn't be that polite, I thought. With that in mind, I let down my guard a little. I replied, "No, I no need help." But the wanderer seemed not to hear my refusal. He slowly walked toward me, a slightly eerie smile on his face, and repeated, "Hello, may I help?" That's when I sensed something was off. I started backing away, saying, "I really no need your help." But the wanderer ignored me, mechanically repeating, "May I help?" I cursed "fuck" and turned to run. As I fled, the wanderer behind me suddenly sprinted toward me, its skin splitting open, revealing a creature with cyanide skin and a mouth full of sharp teeth on its belly, a skin stealer. Hearing footsteps behind me, I turned my head sharply and saw the skin stealer charging at me. I was so startled that my hand trembled and I nearly dropped the bottled lightning. Fortunately, the speed 2 nucleus in my body kicked in. I could clearly feel that I was running faster than when I first arrived at the Backrooms. But even so, the skin stealer was closing the distance between us. Just then I saw a fork ahead and turned right without hesitation. But at that moment, a hound suddenly sprang out from the left and began chasing me. This meant I now had 2 creatures chasing me. If it were only one, I might have a chance, but 2 together, my frail body couldn't withstand that. I looked at the bottled lightning in my hand, gritted my teeth, and quickly turned around. At the same time, I thrust out the hand holding the almond water, splashing it toward the 2 pursuing creatures. Though a lot of the almond water had spilled during the run, fortunately, there was still half left, and it all splashed squarely onto the faces of the skin stealer and the hound. But because the amount of almond water wasn't much, the 2 creatures only paused for a moment before continuing to pounce. Yet that brief pause was enough. I threw the bottled lightning. The bottled lightning crashed at the feet of the 2 creatures. With a crack, the bottle shattered, and the blue lightning inside shot out with a whoosh, then exploded across the 2 creatures. Watching the 2 creatures glow blue, I quickly stepped back. In the blink of an eye, they stiffened and fell to the ground, emitting a faint, burnt smell. I felt a bit nauseous, but I still took the dagger and stabbed the 2 creatures a couple of times to be sure. Then I noticed a small bead lying quietly beside them, emitting a milky white glow. It was a nucleus. Nuclei only appear in dangerous places with a certain probability. The higher the danger level, the greater the chance of a nucleus appearing. The chase by the 2 creatures and the explosion of the bottled lightning just now should be considered dangerous, so here a nucleus had spawned. I happily picked it up, not caring about dirt, and swallowed it directly. A line of information appeared in my mind: nucleus level 1, effect agility 1, equip. Remaining slots 2. Equip. I silently recited in my mind. As another slot lit up in my mind, I felt my body become lighter. I tried swinging the dagger a few times, feeling the augmentation from the nucleus. Compared to usual, my movements seemed a bit faster. Though it was only a little, I was still very happy because that little bit of speed might have taken weeks or even months of training under normal circumstances. I then wondered if I got a nucleus from being chased by two creatures. What about the time in level 9 when I was attacked by a horde of entities? Could a nucleus have spawned then? But at that life or death moment I hadn't observed carefully, and I didn't know about nuclei at the time, so now I had no way of knowing. After killing two creatures and obtaining a nucleus, my confidence in surviving the backrooms grew a little. But then the silent corridor suddenly echoed with dense footsteps. The footsteps were chaotic, as if many people were traveling together. My internal alarm bells rang loudly. The footsteps echoed continuously through the corridor, and the source seemed to be behind me. I jerked my head around. In the darkness behind me, a single shadow was moving slowly. How could one shadow produce so many footsteps? I felt a chill run down my spine. Just then I noticed a room nearby. The shadow was getting closer, and in the corridor on the other side another shadow appeared, also moving slowly. Truly a wolf in front and a tiger behind, I thought helplessly. Without hesitation, I ran straight to the nearest room. I opened the door, quickly entered and closed it. I gripped the gun tightly and began to survey the room. After all, I was now hidden in the room. Even if I fired my gun and the creatures outside heard, they couldn't get in. With that thought, I pressed my back against the door and tightened my grip on the gun. At that very moment, from the darkness of the room, one pair of eyes after another lit up, all staring straight at me. As pairs of eyes lit up in the darkness, my heart suddenly skipped a beat. In level 3, some rooms are occupied by smiling fiends. When you enter such a room, a swarm of smiling fiends will surge from the darkness, staring at you with their iconic, deathly smiles. This kind of room is also known as the smiling room. I recalled a description of smiling fiends that I had read before. Smiling fiends are attracted to light and will chase any luminous object. They only attack when you start to panic and flee or make loud noises. The best way to deal with smiling fiends is to maintain eye contact, walk away slowly, or spray smiling repellent or almond water. At this moment, chaotic footsteps could still be heard outside, as if they were pacing at the door. Vaguely, I seemed to hear the iconic howling of a hound, so I dared not act rashly and go out. But staying in the room was also extremely dangerous. Although the smiling fiends had not yet attacked me, I knew it was only temporary. Perhaps in the next second the smiling fiends would pounce on me mercilessly and tear me apart. At this moment, over a dozen smiling fiends were in front of me, their gleaming bared teeth sending a chill down my spine. I stealthily fumbled for a bottle of almond water from my backpack, unscrewed the cap for emergencies, while pricking up my ears to listen for sounds outside, ready to flee at any moment. The moment the noises outside ceased would be the best time for me to escape. If I fled into the corridor, using a dagger would be the best choice. I slowly put the gun back into my backpack and began to feel for the dagger inside. But at that moment, I touched an item I had always overlooked, a stone-carved beetle that Gio had given me. I remembered what Gio had said to me: this beetle can save your life at a critical moment. I knew that Gio wouldn't lie to me in that situation. Perhaps this beetle statue could really save my life. With this thought, I took out the beetle statue. But the moment I pulled out the beetle, the group of smiling fiends, for some unknown reason, became agitated and seemed about to charge. I instantly panicked, my body frozen in place, afraid to make any unnecessary movements. Then I recalled a detail: the time when the smiling fiends became agitated was exactly the moment I took out the beetle statue. Could it have something to do with the beetle statue? Filled with doubt, I carefully observed the beetle in my hand out of the corner of my eye, while maintaining eye contact with the smiling fiends. But after a few seconds of observation, I couldn't see anything special about it. Could it have some hidden function? But the situation no longer allowed me to dwell on this question, because the smiling fiends in front of me were becoming increasingly agitated. At first, only a few smiling fiends were floating around in place, but now several of them began to drift toward me, instantly drenching me in cold sweat. I held the beetle statue with extreme tension. At this moment, the faint howling of the hound could still be heard outside. It seemed to have made its lair nearby and refused to leave. But even if it refused to leave, I had to go. I watched the approaching smiling fiends silently, counting down in my mind: 3, 2, 1. This was the countdown for me to turn around and open the door. As the word 1 left my lips, I quickly splashed the almond water in my hand toward the group of smiling fiends, then spun around, opened the door, and prepared to run. But the moment I opened the door, a hound suddenly sprang out from the doorway and lunged at me. This hound actually knew how to ambush. Fortunately, the agility core I had equipped earlier played a crucial role. At the instant the hound pounced, I blocked it with the half-full bottle of almond water. The hound crashed into me and bit onto the almond water I held in front. At that moment, the smiling fiends behind me also swarmed in, surrounding me. But then a sudden change occurred. The beetle statue that had fallen to the ground suddenly spread its wings, emitted a loud buzzing sound, and began to glow with a steady blue light. Even more surprisingly, the smiling fiends, which are usually drawn to light, scrambled to flee outward upon contact with the blue light, as if they were terrified of it. As for the hound that had been pinning me down, upon seeing the glowing blue beetle statue, it leaped off me, took 2 steps back, and then turned and fled. Although I didn't immediately understand the situation, I still closed the door as quickly as possible. At this moment, both the smiling fiends in the room and the hound at the door had been driven away by this beetle statue. Truly miraculous. After the danger was eliminated, I slumped to the floor and picked up the beetle statue. At that moment, the blue light on the beetle began to fade, the buzzing sound subsided, but it still kept its wings spread. I looked at the beetle statue in my hand and sighed. I really owe you for this, otherwise I would have been done for today. Even more astonishingly, as my voice faded, the beetle statue's previously spread wings folded back, returning to its original statue form. I put away the beetle statue and began to scan the room, looking for any useful supplies. Logically, the more dangerous the room, the more abundant the supplies, because such rooms are rarely visited by wanderers. Sure enough, the room was stocked with a large amount of almond water, and besides almond water, there were many other supplies. On the table lay a bag of fire salt and a bag of royal rations. I scavenged several dozen oddly shaped candies from the drawer. On the floor there was something that looked like a water gun. Somewhat excited, I packed these items into my backpack, while also taking out the half-eaten royal ration from my backpack to replenish my energy. At this moment, except for the water gun and the candies, all other items had been stowed in my backpack. The room was still relatively safe, so I decided to study the uses of the candies and the water gun. First, I picked up a few candies. These candies came in various shapes, some like a tongue, some like a gun, some like a bullet. In short, they were all kinds of strange and bizarre. The only candy that looked like a normal one was a flat-shaped candy. Among these dozen or so candies, there were 3 of this flat kind. I decided to eat one to test its effect. I unwrapped a flat candy and put it in my mouth to chew. In just a few seconds, the candy melted on my tongue, but what happened next caught me completely off guard. I saw my entire body begin to float toward the wall. Yes, float. After eating the candy, I felt as if I had turned into a piece of paper, then forcibly stuck onto the wall. And I could even see the bricks next to me out of the corner of my eye. Oh, I had become 2-dimensional. If there had been a mirror in front of me, I would have seen myself as a vivid wallpaper on the wall. At this moment, only fear could describe my feelings. Was I going to stay on the wall as a wallpaper forever? I thought, sorrowfully vowing that if I ever got off the wall, I would never eat random things again. Fortunately, after a while, I returned to 3 dimensions and fell off the wall. I glanced at the wall with lingering fear, then packed up the candies and put them into my backpack. As for the flat candies, I put them separately in my pocket. I regarded this candy as one of my life-saving trump cards, because from the experiment just now, this candy could turn a person 2-dimensional and attach them to the surrounding wall for a period of time. So if I were being chased by entities, eating one of these candies. But there were only 2 of these candies left, and I had to use them only in the most critical moments. As for the water gun, I studied it for a long time and felt it was no different from an ordinary water gun. Because of its large size, I left it where it was and did not take it. Although I felt a bit regretful, there was nothing I could do about it. After all, it was too bulky and inconvenient to carry. At this point, I had looted all the usable supplies in the room. I then pressed my ear against the door and listened carefully for sounds outside. After listening for a long time, I was sure there was no movement outside, so I gently pushed the door open and stepped out. The corridor was now desolate. I had no idea where the group of smiling fiends had gone, or if they were hiding nearby. Even though I had the flat candies, I still dared not act carelessly and continued to walk slowly with caution. After inventorying my supplies, I cautiously left the room. Now I began to ponder whether to rendezvous with the M.E.G. or seek a special door to cut out of level 3. The former offered little hope, while the latter was exceptionally perilous. For a moment, I was at a loss as to how to choose. Take it one step at a time. I sighed, consoling myself with that thought. In the backrooms, especially in a level 4 hazard zone, staying put was tantamount to waiting for death. I had no choice but to keep moving forward, searching for an exit. Advancing along the corridor, I encountered numerous rooms, but I dared not enter any of them, fearing I might stumble upon another smiling room. At the same time, I came across many places that resembled prison bars. Every time I passed by these bars, I felt a pair of eyes coldly monitoring me from behind them, sending chills down my spine and compelling me to quicken my pace. Just then I arrived at a corner of the corridor. From the other side, the sound of children laughing and playing reached my ears. In such a terrifying environment were there still kids frolicking. A surge of suspicion washed over me, and I halted my steps, beginning to retreat cautiously. I dared not run, fearing the sound of my footsteps would alert the unknown entity lurking on the other side of the corridor. But at that moment, 3 little girls in white holding hands slowly emerged from around the corner. They kept their heads lowered, their long hair obscuring their faces. I couldn't make out their features, but what was eerie was that the 3 girls were singing the nursery rhyme, "Find a friend," in unison, steadily drawing closer to me. Find a friend, find a good friend. The 3 girls hopped and skipped as they sang, forming a circle around me, spinning and chanting incessantly. In the backrooms, being surrounded by 3 eerie little girls singing could not be a good omen. Suddenly the three girls stopped singing, stood still, and simultaneously raised their heads, revealing faces devoid of any features. They slowly asked me, "Big brother, would you like to be our good friend?" Holy crap. The sight of those three smooth, mirror-like faces jolted me into a curse. I burst out of their circle with all my strength and fled down the corridor without looking back. Behind me, the three faceless girls let out a chorus of giggle giggle, laughter trailing me like shadows, endlessly repeating, "Stay and be our friend, stay and be our friend." With the aid of level 2 speed enhancement, I ran swiftly, and gradually the noises behind me faded. I slowed my pace and glanced back to see the three faceless girls standing in the darkness, silently watching me leave. Beside them, another white figure had appeared, equally featureless. I shuddered, and seeing that they weren't pursuing, I hurried away. After putting sufficient distance between myself and those faceless entities, I breathed a sigh of relief. Since arriving in level 3, I had stopped and started countless times, and now drowsiness began to creep over me. It suddenly occurred to me that I hadn't slept much since entering the backrooms. On one hand, there was no clear day or night in the backrooms, and I had no timekeeping device, so I had no fixed sleep schedule. On the other hand, ever since I arrived, I had been walking on a knife's edge, my nerves constantly taut, leaving little room for sleepiness. Now that sleepiness had descended, I knew it was due to extreme mental and physical exhaustion. Under these circumstances, sleeping in the corridor would be a death sentence. I needed to find a safe room where I could rest assured. Not far away, I spotted a room. I walked over, knocked on the door, and pressed my ear against it, listening intently. Convinced there was no sound inside, I cautiously pushed the door open and entered. The room was pitch black, but unlike the last time, no pairs of eyes lit up. This was a normal room, sparsely furnished. There wasn't even a bed. After closing the door, I found it could be locked, so I quickly turned the lock. Locking the door, I drew my pistol, chambered around, and aimed it at the entrance while lying down in the center of the room. I was so exhausted that I fell asleep within seconds of hitting the floor. Strangely, in my slumber, I vaguely heard the sound of a door opening. But when I woke up, I found that the door was indeed wide open. It stood ajar, revealing the dark, silent corridor. Cold sweat broke out all over me. I had slept so deeply that I hadn't even noticed the door being opened. Yet I remembered clearly that I had locked the door. That meant some unknown entity must have passed through the wall to open. The lingering drowsiness from just waking up vanished, instantly replaced by a gnawing fear of the unknown. If that thing had wanted to kill me, I would have already been dead while I slept. I had originally intended to head to the M.E.G. to rendezvous, but now my mood had soured, for I knew that level 3 harbored entities capable of killing me at will. Although it had spared me this time, who could guarantee that one day it wouldn't decide to eliminate me? I gripped my pistol, summoned every ounce of alertness, and stepped into the corridor. Having just slept and replenished some energy, I was now physically vigorous, but my mind remained haunted by that unknown entity. Thus I was desperate to leave level 3. Perhaps because I had explored long enough, I finally discovered a door unlike the others. It was embedded in the wall at the end of the corridor. Pressing my ear against the door, I could even hear music emanating from the other side. I was almost certain this was the door to the next level. I glanced back at the dark corridor behind me, then opened the door to the unknown. As I stepped through, a sensation of falling engulfed me, and a second later, I landed on solid ground. I stood up and found myself in a circular grandstand overlooking an ice rink below. The rink was adorned with colorful lights, and popular music from the front rooms played in the background. On the surrounding stands, I spotted the silhouettes of many wanderers. Seeing fellow humans filled me with joy. I hurried toward the nearest shadow, tapped its shoulder, and asked, "Hello friend, do you know where this is?" That wanderer lifted its head, glanced at me, ignored my question, and walked away on its own. But that single glance gave me a terrible fright, for the wanderer's face was utterly featureless, identical to the 3 little girls I had encountered in level 3. What puzzled me, however, was that this faceless entity seemed to harbor no hostility toward me. Just then a familiar voice came from behind me. "That's an adult faceling a friendly entity. No need to worry." Hearing that familiar voice, I spun around. It was Gio. Seeing Gio in an unknown level filled me with both joy and concern. Joy because Gio had survived in the backrooms for so long, possessing rich experience. With his guidance, my chances of survival would greatly increase. Concern because Gio was a member of the Blade Ridge Rangers, typically venturing into dangerous territories. My encounter with him in level 9 was the best proof. And now meeting him here, did it mean this place was also extremely perilous? I quickly took out the Babble lip balm, applied it to my lips, and asked Gio, "Which level is this? Why are you?" Gio smiled and said, "Don't worry, this is level 31, a very safe. I'm here to carry out a mission." From Gio, I learned the details of this level. Level 31, the circular ice rink. Class 1, safe, stable, very few entities. After Gio gave me a general introduction to level 31, I gained a comprehensive understanding of this level and also learned about Gio's mission. Gio planned to secretly cut into level 40 from level 31, then single-handedly annihilate a terrorist organization known as the Scrambler Outpost. After explaining his plan, Gio suddenly looked at me and said, for this mission to level 40, to wipe out the Scrambler outpost, do you want to come with me? Since you have nothing to do right now after this mission is completed, I'll arrange a residence for you in level 1 when I return to the organization. At that moment, I suddenly realized that the person before me seemed to hold a high position in the Unbound Explorer Alliance. According to Gio, he was the captain of the Blade Ridge Guerrilla within the Unbound Explorer Alliance. This position, in my view, was equivalent to the third-in-command of the Alliance. Given that getting a house in level 1 for me was a piece of cake for Gio. Hearing this, I decisively said, all right, he'll go with you. After all, I now possessed 2 Henning and had traversed several high-danger levels, so I figured I could be of some help to Gio. According to Gio's intelligence, the Scrambler outpost we were about to eliminate had only 5 people. I would provide support while Gio would handle the assassinations. It seemed easy to take down this 5-man outpost, I thought. Gio was also pleased that I agreed, but I couldn't quite understand why he was so happy. Compared to a wanderer like Gio who had lived in level 9 for years, my help seemed insignificant. Yet he had invited me to fight alongside him with such solemnity. What did he see in me? I didn't know, but I knew Gio wouldn't harm me. If Gio wanted to harm me, he wouldn't have spared people to carry me back to the stronghold in level 9, nor would he have pulled me into the bushes to hide when I was being chased by entities. At that moment, Gio suddenly smiled and said, I see something special in you. Something that matches the Backrooms perfectly. In short, you are very suited to the Backrooms. If you joined the Quick Cut players, they would surely welcome you even more. Special. High compatibility with the Backrooms. Quick Cut players. I had a rough idea of what Gio meant by special, but I wasn't entirely sure what it was. Then Gio said to me, let's rest here for a while, then cut directly into level 40 for the operation. Gio was always resolute, and I replied, all right. With that, Gio led me to the food street in level 31 to rest. Level 31 has 3 major areas: the main zone, the arcade zone, and the food street. The large ice rink we were currently in was the main zone. In the arcade zone, touching any running game console would lead to level 40. Gio and I first went to the food street to replenish our energy and adjust our state. In the food street, there was a small dining area with cheap food and a cold drink shop where almond water could be obtained. There was only one entity here, a faceling wearing a staff uniform and a blank name tag. This entity was docile. If asked, it would provide food and almond water for free. However, if asked about the Backrooms, it would become agitated and tell you to leave. Gio and I got a bottle of gray almond water and a pizza from the faceling. Having eaten dry compressed biscuits and jerky for so long, I finally had hot food, and I couldn't help but feel. In theory, this place was more livable than level 1, but unfortunately its space was limited, and there was no place to sleep comfortably. Most importantly, this place was extremely difficult to enter. Apart from entering through the hub, you could only get in by encountering a special door in the previous levels. But this door appeared randomly, and had a low probability of formation, which meant that although level 31 was a habitable zone, it had no bases or outposts. After eating, Gio and I went to the arcade zone. The arcade zone looked quite large, but its space was not in. There was a dangerous entity called the Hound distributed here. However, the Hound was not a great threat to me now. A grown man with a sharp weapon could handle a lone hound. Moreover, I had Gio by my side, so I wasn't too worried about my safety. We found a running game console, and immediately I felt a familiar sensation of falling. When the falling sensation stopped, I felt solid ground beneath my feet. I quickly looked up to observe the surroundings. This was the first thing I did every time I entered a new level. Level 40, Rock Pizza. According to Gio, in this level the danger was not from entities, but from wanderers. Hearing this, I was slightly stunned, but quickly recovered. The reason I was stunned was that ever since arriving in the Backrooms, I had been wondering why everyone was so friendly despite the dangerous environment. I had met people from M.E.G., the Unbound Explorer Alliance, and the Home Hotel, all of whom were very kind to wanderers. This had led me to believe that entities were the only danger in the Backrooms. Now it seemed that many wanderers also needed to be cautious. The Scrambler outpost we were about to eliminate was an outpost established in level 40 by a notorious terrorist organization in the Backrooms. They would rob wanderers without hesitation, and in special circumstances they would even kill you. The reason Gio wanted to eliminate this outpost in level 40 was that it had secretly murdered a member of their organization not long ago. Although the murder was secret, the Unbound Explorer Alliance had received the news. So after escaping from level 9, Gio had taken on this mission alone, bringing me along as an assistant. I looked around. Many surfaces in this level had complex design elements or patterns. For example, the deep blue neon carpet and concrete walls were adorned with planets and stars, giving the impression of spaceships and astronauts moving about. There were not only numerous game consoles, but also many vending machines, and surprisingly you could shop from them. I wandered around casually and soon found Gio. We had entered through the same game console, so we weren't far apart and easily found each other. After reuniting, Gio smiled and said, "Want to play a couple of rounds first? There are many arcade games from the front rooms here, very interesting. Every time I come I play a few rounds to have some fun." With that, Gio walked over to a game console and started playing King of Fighters. I was stunned not because he was playing, but because he was playing against another person. I could clearly see that Gio was playing a player versus player match, not against AI. If not AI, then who was he playing? Then I noticed a young man next to Gio also playing King of Fighters. His opponent was the character my Shiranui controlled by Gio. The game consoles here could even connect online. Although I didn't understand the principle, I was greatly impressed. Soon Gio finished a match. I noticed a hint of smugness on his face while the young man looked slightly dissatisfied. Clearly Gio had won. Seeing my astonishment, Gio laughed heartily and said, "Don't be so surprised. There are many amazing things in the Backrooms. Stick with me and you'll see more." The young man, noticing us, gave me a curious glance before starting another match. Gio patted my shoulder and said, "Come on, let's prepare. He'll tell you the details of our plan." Gio seemed very familiar with the place. He casually pulled me toward a rest area, sat down on a sofa, and said mysteriously, "I have a perfect plan, thought of it when I met you." I suddenly had a bad feeling. "What is this plan?" I asked Gio. "Originally I intended to use you as bait, but now there's no need," Gio said abruptly. "No need? Why? Did the plan change?" I asked, puzzled. Gio had been acting mysteriously ready to unveil his scheme, but now his sudden change of heart left me bewildered. Gio shrugged. "It's not a change of plan. Someone else has already wiped out the Scrambler outpost for us, so we don't need to intervene." As he spoke, he gestured in a certain direction. "See, that's the one." I followed his gaze and saw a young man walking toward us, his eyes meeting mine. He saw me, nodded, and said, "Greetings. We met briefly earlier, but I haven't introduced myself. I am Huaitsong, a truth arbiter of Argus-I." I stared at the young man in astonishment. He was the very same person I had seen earlier playing a networked game against Gio. He had lost to Gio and looked utterly unconvinced, yet now it turned out his strength was terrifying. He had single-handedly annihilated the Scrambler outpost. As Huaitsong drew closer, I sensed the henning radiating from him. But why hadn't I felt it when we first met? I wanted to ask Gio, but this was clearly not the right moment. I saw Gio glaring at Huaitsong, ready to strike at the slightest provocation. "You people from Argus-I are such a nuisance. No matter what we do, your shadows are always there," Gio said slowly. Then he shrugged, mocking, "Back in level 9, which was danger level 5, why didn't you follow us? Now that we're at Rock Pizza danger level 1, you show up. What were you scared?" Huaitsong curled his lip. "We naturally had people tailing you in level 9. You just didn't notice." "Oh really? Then when we were attacked by the grinder, why didn't your people emerge?" Gio countered. Huaitsong suddenly turned to look at me, then back at Gio. "That was trouble you stirred up yourselves. What did it have to? We naturally wouldn't court death by jumping out. Then what does this annihilation of the Scrambler outpost have to do with you?" Gio asked flatly. "The Scrambler outpost was already on our elimination list. We just happened to cross paths with you this time," Huaitsong replied. "In that case, thank you for the favor. If there's nothing else, I'll be going," Gio said, waving a hand, clearly unwilling to prolong the conversation. "Actually, I came to see you about something," Huaitsong said, his tone turning serious. "What is it?" Gio asked. "If you continue your research in level 283, Argus, I will be forced to take measures to stop you." Huaitsong spoke earnestly. Gio chuckled. "I can't make decisions on that. If you want to issue an ultimatum, you'd better take it up with the Witch God Research Institute." He paused, then added, "Besides, if you really intend to enforce a stop, I'd welcome it. I don't like that research either." With that, Gio turned to me and said, "Let's go." He pulled me away without looking back, leaving Huaitsong standing. He stood frozen for a long moment, then finally smiled and muttered to himself, "A wanderer like Gio doesn't really belong with the Unbound Explorer Alliance. He'd fit better with us at Argus-I." Of course, we didn't hear those words. After walking in silence for a while, I saw Gio was brooding, so I asked, "What kind of organization is Argus-I, the one that young man mentioned?" Gio thought for a moment and replied, "An organization that abhors evil. But precisely because of that, they've become the security force of the Backrooms. They judge all crimes. Every truth arbiter of Argus is a madman. Does your Unbound Explorer Alliance have a bad relationship with them?" I asked after some thought. I continued pondering further. Gio nodded. "In their eyes, the Unbound Explorer Alliance is classified as a high-level criminal organization. All our activities are under their surveillance. When necessary, they will intervene to stop us." I stopped in my tracks, astonished. From what I knew, the Unbound Explorer Alliance seemed to be a very friendly organization. Why would a righteous group like Argus-I label it as highly criminal? Gio saw my confusion. He sighed. "Every organization from the moment of its birth inevitably succumbs to corruption. The Unbound Explorer Alliance at its founding was indeed a good organization. But now it has decayed severely." He fell silent, and I tactfully refrained from asking further. After all, it was their internal conflict. Then I asked Gio, "Why didn't I sense the henning inside Huaitsong when I first saw him?" Gio smiled at the question. "Remember what I told you before. When entering a new level, you can replace the henning you are wearing, or you can remove it entirely. If all your henning are in the unequipped state, others cannot perceive the henning within your body." I nodded, suddenly enlightened. Just then Gio's furrowed brow relaxed. He smiled. "How about we go play some games to unwind? There aren't many levels in the Backrooms where you can play games, so we should seize the opportunity. He walked toward a game machine and cautioned me. Except for a game called Starflare Admiral, which is dangerous, all the other games here are safe to play. So even playing games here carried risks. I thought to myself, then found a game machine to play. Having been in the Backrooms for so long, I actually missed some of the games from the front rooms. For some reason, the games on my machine were all animal-themed. I randomly picked one called Animal Keeper and started playing. But no sooner had I clicked on it than I heard Gio's voice from across the room. Oh, I almost forgot. There's also a game called Animal Keeper you shouldn't play. It's not dangerous, but it will cut a wanderer into level 81. Hearing this, I froze. Is Animal Keeper this game? Gio paused too, probably never expecting that on my first time playing at level 40, I would manage to stumble upon that specific game. He hurried over. Don't click on that game yet. Let me take a look. But by then the screen in front of me had already loaded Animal Keeper. I winced. Too late, it's already loaded. Before I could finish, I felt a sensation of falling. Gio arrived just in time to hear my too late, and then I vanished before his eyes. Gio smacked his head in frustration and muttered to himself, how can this kid be so unlucky? First he gets cut into level 9, and now he randomly picks a game and lands on Animal Keeper. The odds are so small, and he hits them. If this were the front room's ID, drag him to buy lottery tickets every day. After muttering, he hesitated, staring at the game machine, contemplating whether to go after me. After thinking for a long while, he sighed. Alright, I'll go find the kid. I have the level key for level 3 anyway, so I can get back anytime. With that, he clicked on Animal Keeper and was cut into level 81. Level 81, Animal Office Building. Survival difficulty. Class 2. Unsafe. Stable. Low entity count.